Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the United States of a Movie Podcast, the movie podcast that makes Monday fun day because we just love getting into it about movies as we try to answer the unanswerable question, can we define each state in the United States by just one movie? It's a nigh on impossible task, but I tell you this much, it could not be more fun. My name is Ollie Pettigrew. I used to host movie shows on Cinemax and HBO, but movies are my passion, as is it the passion of my two co-hosts who'd love to really get into it with movies with me. Let's welcome them back to the show, of course. Ryan Son, and welcome back, buddy.
Oh, so great to be here. I love it.
Because we're heading home for you.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing this week. We're going to Ryan's backyard. But of course, we also have to, it's a really big backyard, lots of buildings. We also got to welcome back our resident gargantuan movie nerd, Will Hirsch. Welcome back, buddy.
Thank you, guys. I just got back from this assembly where the speaker was like this weird samurai mixed with Dracula. Told us that we were all family. I didn't quite understand it, but it sounded great. So I'm very excited about this new life I got for myself.
You just said Dracula Samurai, and now I want to see that movie more than ever.
That sounds like an awesome movie that Nicolas Cage is 100% going to star in.
Yeah. Let's get to work on it right now. Samurai Dracula.
I will watch the crap out of that movie. The state that we're approaching, I kind of feel bad actually for this particular state. One, for the movies we chose, and two, because we did what most people in the world do, that when we talk about the state of New York, everyone goes, New York City? Because we're going to the state of New York, but I tell you this much, we're mostly going to the city of New York. The city's so nice, they named it twice. But it was a fun one. I've been wanting to do New York, and it's been much like California. It's a movie, so it's a state, much like DC as well, it's a state where there are so many movies to choose from that honestly, we could do a whole season on just New York movies. So it was kind of fun to jump in. But we jumped in a strange way. Will, let's start with your choice. A bold choice, and a choice that I haven't seen, honestly, since that movie came out. What did you choose?
Yeah.
I picked the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Clearly the most New York movie ever made. I've seen this movie. You said you haven't seen it since it came out. I've watched this about as many times as I've seen Terminator 2, my favorite movie of all time. I've seen this easily hundreds and hundreds of times. I even offered you guys, if you wanted to watch your versions on mute, just call me up and I will recite the entire
one-man turtle show
and the music. So
the 1990 monster movie, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, directed by Steve Barron, who weirdly enough, very, very accomplished music video director. Directed a lot of very famous music videos like Billie Jean, Money for Nothing, Africa by Toto, Take On Me by a-ha. So I'm like, oh, okay.
It's so interesting you say that, Billie Jean, because this movie kind of looks like that music video a bit. Like, its stylistic choices and like the way the city is.
Thing. It's got cool style.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. It doesn't really, I mean, it stars. You got Judith Hoag as April O'Neil. I did really appreciate within 5 seconds of her character being introduced, she's wearing a bright yellow jacket. Yes.
Yeah.
Elias Koteas as Casey Jones.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Perfect casting, I have to be honest. Just like in the cartoon. It also, though, does feature the voice of Corey Feldman and a peculiar first movie introduction for a very young Sam Rockwell.
Yeah.
This movie's awesome. And Kevin Clash as Splinter, who did Elmo
right?
for years.
Yeah. Which blew my mind when I was a kid.
Yeah. What?
Yeah, Elmo, the voice of Elmo is in this movie.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Who was he?
He's Splinter, man.
He's Splinter.
No, really? Wow. Oh, you're gonna be blowing my mind about shit throughout this episode, because that movie was honestly, Mrs. She always, every week she hears, the movies that we're doing, and she always wants to join in, but Mrs. is also very busy. If she's not busy doing everything else, she's busy listening to this podcast. Hi, Mrs. Thank you for supporting and telling your friends. But she really wanted to kind of watch the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. And I get why, because I watched it and I'm like, what was fascinating, because I was one of those kids. Now in the UK, I told you guys before, it was known as Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles because ninjas is too violent. So, and then anytime they say the word ninja, I watched old clips of it on YouTube. They've just edited the word ninja out. So they go, "Come on, Teenage Turtles, let's go Turtles." It's like anytime it's just, they never say the word hero. So for us, we were super excited when the trailer for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles came out. Not only is it live action, but it's got ninjas. Ooh,
terrible
X
ninjas.
Yeah.
Well, actually, and we're going to get into it. There are the absolute heroes of that movie are the truly incredible stuntmen inside those things. I'm like, we have to get into that, and we will get into that later. But we've got to get into other movies as well. Now, I like that, Will, that you said that you've sort of seen Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 100 times, and honestly, we could have called you on mute and quoted it. I could do the same thing for the movie that I brought to the table, the movie that I have seen 150 times. I had it on VHS as a kid, and it's like I've told you guys before, I go with my gut because I think about the movie that first made me think of what a place looked like. And when this movie came out in 1986, I saw it when I was about 6 years old. And that first shot of New York of just like a wide pavement of 20 people all just bumping into each other and things like that. And I go, wow, what a crazy city. Because I chose 1986, 5 stars, perfect movie, no notes. Can't wait to get into this, Will. Crocodile Dundee. I love this movie so much. I know it's a bold choice considering the first 35 minutes take place in Australia, but at the same time, this movie always makes me think of New York. Stars Paul Hogan, introduces Linda Kozlowski, who goes on to like marry him for like 20 years. That's why they have so much crazy chemistry. They dated. And it was really interesting that she's introduced in this movie. That this is her movie debut. Because she's so hot. So but as a young boy, I'm like, I don't know what, but I like it. It's directed by Peter Feynman. He's been pretty much an Aussie TV guy, did a lot of stuff in Aussie TV, used to work on the Paul Hogan show. So Paul Hogan, like on TV in Australia. Ryan, you enjoyed this movie, and Will, you've put this on your pantheon of greatest movies ever made. Am I right?
I put this on the list of movies I have seen. So that's where it belongs.
It's gonna be like Twister again, isn't it?
Yeah, I remember this movie so differently, and I mean, I think this movie was such a gargantuan hit back then that like, people were like, Australia is a place.
That was my question. Was in the 80s, were people, because everyone in this movie reacts to him like, Australian, what is that? I'm like, was it just invented? Did they just take down all the penal colonies?
This movie was made by the Tourism Board of Australia.
No kidding.
And then brought back for a Super Bowl commercial.
That's right. I was so excited for that.
Which, when hearing it wasn't going to be a new movie starring Danny McBride and Chris Hemsworth. I was like,
Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah. Well, all the Hemsworth, Larry Hemsworth, all of them. I was kind of let down. I was like, oh man, I think this would have been a fun thing having Danny McBride play Crocodile Dundee Jr. Just give me that.
It's certainly, a product of its time in a way. I also love this movie dearly.
It's very charming. For sure,
it does have its charm, and it is like a tight 90.
It's a real croc 90. Out of water story.
we will get back. Like, Ryan, you've seen Crocodile Dundee, right?
I have. I haven't seen it nearly as many times as you have, you fucking psychopath. But man, I hadn't seen it forever. But I feel like I have a very almost Mandela effect memory of this film. I remember it so differently, and watching it anew, I was kind of like, I don't really remember a lot of this, and I don't remember a lot of it being pretty problematic at times.
Only a couple of massively problematic parts.
Yeah, but it stars a young Carl Winslow.
Yes.
Reginald,
doing his best Argyle, I guess.
I didn't even piece that together.
Oh, Die Hard reference. Well done. We will get back to that as well, because there is also one more movie we honestly, guys, we went back to the late 80s, early 90s for these, which it's kind of, so we've got a very similar vibe. The New York is very similar in all of these. But the movie that Ryan you chose, you brought to the table an interesting choice, one that I haven't seen for a long time.
This was a tough one for me, growing up in New York my whole life, and I was reaching out and talking to a bunch of friends, mentioning this podcast, trying to gauge what do you consider, this movie. I've lived in Arizona for almost 20 years now, so it's a tough pick. But just watching New York movies growing up as a kid, you just don't think, you're like, oh, I mean, I'm here. But I didn't grow up in the city, and most New York films take place in like downtown Manhattan, and that's it. But I picked, I landed on Wall Street, starring everyone's favorite wraith, Charlie Sheen.
I was disappointed this wasn't a movie about a New York stockbroker who died and then came back as a wraith.
If you imagine this as a sequel to The Wraith, where Charlie Sheen rides off on his motorcycle into the sunset and then ditches what's-her-face just to become a stockbroker in New York. And he's like, oh man, those wraithen days are behind me.
Now I'm here to make money.
Stocks is what I do now.
Yes, the 1987 movie Wall Street, directed by Oliver Stone, famous director of everything, many things.
Famously from the movie Dave.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can't believe he went on to direct this film. It's fantastic.
He's famously in all of his movies as well.
Yes, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Any Given Sunday. You know what? I was random aside, I was just thinking about, but I was pitching some video to somebody. She must have been about 20 something. I said, kind of like the movie Any Given Sunday. And she's like, what are you talking about? Is it the movie Any Given Sunday? And then I realized that movie came out before she was born.
God, that's depressing.
And that's never mind.
The James Woods movie?
I do want to go on record that for our last episode of Washington, D.C., we did go after James Woods a little bit. And I just want to say on camera and record that it was hilarious. You should listen to it. Okay. So Wall Street also stars Michael Douglas, who I believe went on to win the Oscar for playing Gordon Gekko. He's a pretty iconic character. You got Charlie Sheen's Bud Fox. We have Daryl Hannah playing her character from Splash.
Yeah.
You got the best casting that they ever done. They have Martin Sheen playing Charlie Sheen's dad. Great. Why wouldn't you do this all the time?
It's great.
Yeah.
My favorite joke from Hot Shots Part 2, when they pass each other. Loved you in Wall Street. Yeah. Great joke.
And again, I'd definitely seen Hot Shots Part 2 before ever seeing Wall Street. So I did not get that reference until much later.
I don't. Same thing. I had seen the movie. I'd seen Hot Shots Part 2 before Wall Street, but I think I had seen, somehow I knew they were both in it. So I did get the joke, but I just hadn't fully seen the movie yet.
My missus and I were just talking about that. I was talking about how we realized that so many of the pastiches are what we saw first.
It's like 6 degrees of Hot Shots Part 2.
Yeah, we were just watching all of these great crap movies. I'm just going, I guess that's funny. Also has Terrence Stamp playing Terrence Stamp. Mm-hmm. And a random quick showing of Sean Young and her appropriate level of crazy.
Yep. And their son is played by Oliver Stone's real life son, the little fat boy.
Adam Driver.
Yep.
a young Adam Driver there. Really, he gets around. What an amazing talent, Adam Driver.
Yeah.
Doesn't get enough credit.
Incredible.
So versatile.
Yeah, especially, at such a young age as well.
It's crazy that Michael Mann cast him as a driver in his upcoming film Ferrari, considering it's just based solely on his name.
Exactly.
True story.
Adam Ferrari driver. Michael Mann's like, I've got it. It's perfect casting.
Perfect. Let's get into Wall Street then. Wall Street was kind of interesting how I was watching it. That the sort of the parallels and overlaps that it kind of has with Wolf of Wall Street. There are actual lines that are exactly the same. It's like, give them me young, dumb, and motivated, and I'll make them a millionaire. And I go, that's the exact line from Wolf of Wall Street. I was like, oh wait, because
this came out first, right?
Wait, what? But yeah, the last time I saw Wall Street, I'd say was maybe, oh my goodness, must be about 18, 20 years ago. And it's because I hadn't seen it, so I watched it. And then, yeah, this was the first time sort of going back. So I forgot a lot. I mean, I remember the sort of the thing about Blue Star Airlines. I remember that. And then I think everything else I remember was just the zeitgeist of this movie. You know, you remember Gordon Gekko's office. You remember the you
Suspenders.
know, the suspenders, you know, the big brick phone, things like that.
Yeah.
But it's
iconic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. But it's I mean, you know how sometimes Oliver Stone gets very Oliver Stone with things?
No.
Oh yeah.
This is not a very Oliver Stone movie. It's a very just movie, which isn't a criticism. It's just I'm like sometimes I feel like Oliver Stone can't get out of his own way, but there's other times I love it. Like Any Given Sunday, which I'm referencing, it has.
That's another one that's like you wouldn't. You know, it's just the way that's shot and filmed, and this really doesn't. I mean, this has a few really cool like camera movements and shots, but you're right. It feels more like just movie than it does Oliver Stone movie. I guess.
Because he gets very stylistic and in some
visually I think you're right. I think, you know, visually it's not the most Oliver Stone thing I've ever seen, not like JFK or anything like that, or Platoon, but writing wise I could see Oliver Stone's handiwork in it, because one thing about Oliver Stone that I think is endearing, I don't think it's a bad quality, is there's not a lot of subtlety when characters are talking to each other. Everybody's kind of got their emotion. Everyone's like, I am good guy for this reason. No, you're a bad guy for this reason. You know, it's very much like that, especially when Daryl Hannah and Charlie Sheen are having their argument. I'm just like, this dialogue's a little rough, but they were selling it, and I was enjoying it. Like I enjoyed Oliver Stone's particular kind of cheese.
I don't love this script, nor do I love the acting, but I do love this movie.
Yeah, I was really enjoying it.
Yeah.
And it's paced really well too. Yes, like for some reason you would think this movie is like a 3-hour overindulgent, like Bulbasaur, but no, it's paced really well.
Yeah. And it's pretty much bang on 2 hours, isn't it?
Yeah.
So to anyone that hasn't watched Wall Street, honestly, it's
GameStop stock the movie.
Yeah, it's essentially a story about Wall Street. But basically, we got Charlie Sheen as our main character. He plays Bud Fox. He's a young stockbroker in New York City, and he kind of wants to bag a whale. He's one of those junior stockbrokers who's just calling people all day, going, "Hey, invest in the stock market. Hey, invest in the stock market." And he's going to try and live off his commission. But he has, for 59 days in a row, he has called this whale, Gordon Gekko, a notorious shark on Wall Street, a corporate raider. And he gets an opportunity to get in with Gordon Gekko, and he's able to give him some inside information about an airline because his father works there. He used to work there, and it enables Gekko to make money. And so brings Gekko into his world. Sorry, brings Bud Fox into the Gekko world, and that's where he kind of teaches him that there's the rules and there's the way it's done. And money doesn't matter. It's all information. It kind of shows slowly how Bud corrupts himself and those around him in a sort of like, because greed is to some people good. Essentially that is the movie. I mean, you're gonna at times be looking at stock prices, and it's almost like, you remember the end of Trading Places where they do something with orange juice and you're not sure what, but you know they made money. It's kind of
I don't understand how I will never understand how the stock market works. And in this instance back then, I don't know if it's still done this way, it's probably all digital, but the dynamic is, from like an outside viewer, it's Charlie Sheen on the phone calling someone who's then running a piece of paper to someone else, who then calls someone else down at the New York Stock Exchange, who then runs the piece of paper to another guy, who then calls someone else, yells out a bunch of nonsense, and you watch a number go up like a decimal point or something.
I still don't fundamentally understand how, like, especially that version of the stock market, which I know still exists, but you get microtransactions and you've got computers and everything else now. But back then, about just a guy with a notepad.
It's pure chaos. How does that work?
Who are you? What's even your name? What did he say? Okay, well, 50,000 to Steve. Give it to him.
The only way I can ever understand it is from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, when Cameron's just doing the hand gestures. I'm like, I was like, what is that? I don't understand it.
None of this movie, when they started like really getting into like how these schemes are like work and the function of Wall Street, I just kind of had to be like, all right, I'm just going to go with the movie and then wait for everyone's reaction to know if what I'm seeing is good or bad.
Yeah,
right. Because I had no clue.
Well, but at the same time, it doesn't really rely on that. The fundamentals of
Right.
it are just about him being corrupt. And I think the
Yeah.
best example of a similar movie tackling a similar thing in a different way is The Wolf of Wall Street with DiCaprio. And he gets in these moments where he's walking and he's breaking the fourth wall and he's talking to camera about, well, basically what we've done is we've got a whole bunch of guys who invested, and he goes, you know what?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It's illegal, and we're going to make a shit ton of money. It's like, oh, okay, there we go. That's all that's important. And that's
the difference between a better script and a dumber audience. It's like the Denny's menu of films. Like I need pictures to be pointed at and say, this is what you want.
Yeah.
See, yeah, so Wall Street doesn't do that, but I don't think at any point do I ever feel like I don't understand.
No.
It's more just like, I don't understand how it works, but I understand what they're doing.
Yeah, it wouldn't have made it any better if I did understand.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, I'm not here for this. I'm here for the terrible decorating.
Dude, we're gonna get there, because I still, we'll give that a few minutes, but I definitely want to spend about 20 minutes talking about decorating.
Yeah, for real.
So essentially, in the plot, so Bud gives him that inside information, it pays off. Gecko gives him like $1 million to go play with on the stock market, and Bud goes back to doing what he was doing, just investing in stocks. And Gecko comes back to me and goes, you're no use to me. You know, this is not what I'm looking for. You're giving me losses. Information is key. I need to know what's happening, where, when.
Yeah, he's got a line. He's like, I don't want you to bring me information. I want you to get me information, or something to that effect. When he's like
dazzle me.
Yeah,
and
really cross that line.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting. So what he does is he approaches like a cleaning service, like people that go into the offices of these buildings after night. He invests in it. You know, he gives money to this guy, so he now becomes a part owner, and so now he can go as a supervisor, and it gives him access to all of these offices around Wall Street, where he now goes nosing around.
It's crazy.
Looking for. I was like, okay. I mean, like, you know, very illegal. But okay. I was like, that's actually pretty smart.
Clever. Yeah.
But hey, if it worked out for the people in the Watergate scandal, oh wait, no, that didn't work out either. Never mind. They should have known this was a bad idea.
But as he gets brought more and more into this world, again, very Wolf of Wall Street, he starts making a ton of money. And again, I do enjoy that many other places, like we were talking Boiler Room before we started recording, right? And these other sort of movies, like Wolf of Wall Street and stuff, they always get into the excesses, the drinking, the cocaine, the hookers, and stuff like that. Whereas
that's why they're so good.
Yeah.
What's your point? Yeah.
Whereas to be honest, this one just kind of stays on the money. It's on the money.
Well, they, you know, once he meets with Gordon, they get the cocaine and hooker out like right away, and then they really never touch back upon it.
Right. Yeah, it's that totally. Yeah, his first day, there's just high class escort knocks on his door, and she's like, "Oh, you don't understand. Gordon sent me." And that is a very funny. Him referring to the stock to invest in as his penis was a very fun line. As in, like, that whole "you should definitely invest" kind of thing, as she's like preparing to give him a blowjob. I like, you know, like you're saying his writing. That was a pretty funny scene.
Pretty good. Yeah. No, I mean, when he hits, man. It's good. But you're right. And typically in movies like this, they really lean into the whole excess, the cars, the mansions, stuff like that. This really doesn't have that, because that's not really the focus of it. I mean, I think you just get that taste you get the montage of, like, you know, he buys that really fancy apartment. He has Daryl Hannah terribly decorate it. They have the dinner scene, which is hilariously, like, they're in this cramped kitchen making sushi. Sure. It's
the 80s, man.
Yeah. You get Gordon Gekko's like house, but it's not like a Wolf of Wall Street, where it's really, you get the yachts and all this other stuff. It just doesn't have that.
It's so as Bud sort of starts getting these tips that help Gecko make money, in one particular case, Anacott Steel, where he screws over Terrence Stamp, and that was just personal. It's Gordon Gekko. He's just a bit of a predator. He's kind of like Richard Gere in Pretty Woman. He's a corporate raider, but I think Richard Gere was actually offered that role. As he's sort of brought into the world, he starts meeting other people. That's when we meet Sean Young, which is Michael Douglas's missus. We meet Oliver Stone's kid, and we also we meet Daryl
Driver,
who is the worst interior decorator in the world.
I mean, even for 87, some of these choices or bad. I mean, because you meet her. I think they're at his house in the Hamptons or something like that, and Bud Fox is admiring the art, which is truly terrible. Like, and she's going off. She's like, "Oh," he's like, "I don't know. I don't get it. Derivative bullshit. Whatever. You get me Ango Gablogian in there, and I'd be thrilled." But she's explained to him why the art is so valuable, and I mean, I guess you could still say that today, but it's just her taste is just awful.
Just awful, because he unleashes her on his $900,000 apartment, which
is still blew my fucking mind.
All of us were like, wow, a penthouse in Manhattan for $900,000. Good God.
Yeah, that's insane. I was following along, just a little bit with your guys because I was like really busy, but I was like reading your guys like the text thread back and forth. You guys were talking about how bad it was, and I wasn't really understanding until I saw it, and I was like, I mean, they're right. This has to be a parody. Like this cannot be someone's actual sense of style.
It's being played for comedy, right? Am I wrong?
Have to. I mean, that's the only thing I can think.
Because
I'm not exaggerating. It looked like Pee-wee's Playhouse. Like it was insane.
All Garfield.
And it's like, they're just putting up fake like bits of brick and like terrible colors. And you remember that she's got that huge piece of art on the wall that's just terrible.
Oh, it's like four skulls.
Like, what do you think? And he's like, it's like nightmare fuel. I think the reason I say I think it's played for comedy is that bit later on where Douglas is over there and he puts his plate through the table.
There's no glass on the table.
Doesn't have any glass on it.
And it's like,
she just does it all the time.
Yeah,
just crazy,
literal insane interior decoration. I mean, there's hieroglyphics on the wall. Like,
it's like the definition of hodgepodge. It's like green with white exposed fake brick, and then you've got like pillars and marble, and just it
looks like she designed the house in Beetlejuice.
Right?
Yeah. When the family come in and they totally mess up that house and. I love that bit because I'm just watching going, what? And then, you're right. They make all that sushi and then he's like, let's just stare at it. Let's just look at it.
God.
Kind of thing.
Yeah. Some of the line readings in this were not good.
Yeah.
You've got this apartment that's expensive and it's been done up and like we've just done the whole cooking montage. And something like this always takes me out of a movie for a second but he pours the red wine from the bottle and it looks like grape juice.
Like cranberry,
that was what I said.
Like
neon
red.
That's not wine.
Yeah.
That is definitely
fun fact.
Gatorade.
The cocaine he was doing very much real.
Probably.
I had a buddy turn to me and say, like, "Do you think he's like doing real cocaine?" And in my mind, I'm like, "Well, there's no way on a movie set." But then I'm like, "Well, this was '87. It's Charlie Sheen, so
and Charlie Sheen, and Oliver
his personal stash." Like, hey, Oliver, how many more takes? Oh, 6 more. Okay, great.
Yeah, he just keeps messing up the lines on purpose.
Yeah, we've already got the insert of you doing that, Charlie. You don't know. Oh, okay.
That's why this movie had a $600 million budget.
That's where all that per diem money the actors get every day goes to.
Yeah,
a little producing.
Well, they saved a lot of money on craft services because nobody was hungry.
Right. That was actually the craft services was the sushi and like the ounce of pasta that they were eating, which was nuts. Like an hour making an ounce of pasta.
They're cutting she's making pasta by hand. They're listening to music and they have the 3 tiny pieces of toast in this toaster that's suspended from the cabinets. I mean, they're just showing off like all of the cool technology that they have in this tiny cramped kitchen, and they just sit down and it's just a little plate with a piece of salad on it and like 2 pieces of sashimi, and they don't even eat it. They go straight to fucking. In almost a like Hot Shots Part 1 refrigerator kind of steamy scene, the way it's shot with the lighting. I'm like, this is just don't want to see this.
We've got to figure out how to get the Hot Shots movies onto this podcast.
What states do those take
place?
We
reference them a lot.
Yeah.
It's like 4 episodes in a row. We haven't mentioned there's a couple of great faces that turn up. John C. McGinley playing John C. McGinley.
Just yelling, baby.
Just, as his usual self.
That image of him walking in with like the tiny Yankees helmet and the base or the tennis racket, the badminton racket, whatever it is. I think
it's squash racket, I think.
That's it. Is just, I mean, you can't have John C. McGinley in your film and not have him crazy yelling. You know?
Yeah.
And it just
Great.
like and just roasting people and just being a little
Yeah.
like being a dick but in an entertaining way.
Yeah.
It's like he just threads
Yeah.
that needle perfectly.
But then when
what's
Charlie
the-
Sheen snaps at him, he's like, "Oh,
yeah,
you're a real dick!" Like,
Yes.
like no one's ever yelled at him before.
But like a very young and attractive James Spader
Yeah,
rocking out.
which is funny because right after this, I watched Mannequin, and he's also in that, and he plays like the smarmiest little prick. Great.
What? Why did you watch Mannequin?
'Cause it just rolled on right after it.
And you were like,
Just
oh,
autoplayed.
the remote
Oh no,
control's
wait,
so
I'm sorry.
far."
I think that was after Turtles, maybe. I forget. Doesn't matter. I was like,
man,
oh shit, I want to watch Mannequin because I was like, wait, because up until very recently, I still wasn't sure what movie I was gonna pick. And the Mannequin popped up. I'm like, oh great, is this in New York? I could just pick Mannequin instead of Wall Street. But no, it takes place in Philly.
Does it?
Yeah.
See, in my mind, it took place in New York.
Right?
Wow. I've
Yeah.
only ever seen that movie like once when it came out, but it's got the guy from
Weekend at Bernie's.
Weekend at Bernie's. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
That's how you knew which movie I was going to say of all those guys.
And yeah.
But yeah, Weekend at Bernie's. I love that.
And
movie.
Weekend at Bernie's too.
Hey man, I've seen that movie. I still believe that Weekend at Bernie's 3.
Jonathan, no, is it Jonathan?
I
forget his
know
name.
that guy with the hair.
Yeah.
You know, from St. Elmo's Fire, isn't he in that one as well? Let's talk about Wall Street though. Wait, so Will, you've seen this movie? I can't remember. Yes, no?
I had seen it, but I'd seen it like same thing as you. I'd seen it like 20 years ago. I think I watched it in junior high at a friend's house.
That's exactly how you discover this movie.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember certain scenes like the cell phone, like where he's on the beach, stuck
Beautiful.
out to me.
I wish you could
and,
see this, bud.
Yeah, yeah. And every scene with a naked woman like is in my head. But other than that,
Yeah.
kind of the rest of the movie dropped out. So I was pretty much watching this again with fresh eyes.
Yeah.
This time around.
The scene you're talking about actually where the sun's going down, he's on the beach. Did you guys like the transfer that I was watching? Like it was all pixely. You know, it's weird. It's almost. But then I was like, oh, is this the movie? And then it cuts to the next scene. I was like, oh, this is just the 80s where there wasn't enough light.
Yeah. It looked like they
What's
shot
funny
that
is
at sunset or sunrise.
I bought the Blu-ray, but I didn't watch the Blu-ray. I was just too lazy, and I'm like, all right, it's on
I
whatever.
got to
it's
open
on,
a
so-
thing and put a thing inside another thing.
Yeah, it was like really late at night. I'm like, I'm just not going to go
Yeah.
get it. So I have not checked to see if my Blu-ray transfer looks better, but it suffers from that thing I see like a lot of digital streaming movies.
Artifact.
There's a lot of film grain.
Yeah.
Because movies don't actually stream in 2 or 4K. That's not actually how they're streamed. When they're slightly lower resolution, there's a lot of film grain. That grain kind of swims around like in an unnatural way. And so that was kind of like bothering me as I was watching it.
It does crack me up though, as a resident purist when it comes to owning physical
You
media.
specifically bought this movie on Blu-ray.
I know.
Still watch the fucking streamer.
I know. It was like $5 at a used record store. I'm like, I'll pick it up. But then I just didn't.
It's worth it just for the Oliver Stone commentary on the decorating,
That's the only reason I
which is
wanted it.
3 hours longer than the movie.
With a lot of like sniffing. I mean, this was his follow-up, like, you know, Platoon in '86 coming out, and that just blowing everybody's nuts off. And it's also just like Charlie Sheen, you forget, you know, I mean, for younger people, you could forget, you know, be forgiven for thinking Charlie Sheen, that guy from Two and a Half Men that with Tiger Blood, you know,
Right.
It's like, no, man, like, it's weird. Like he was at one time a leading man of big movies, but also a leading man of comedy deadpan movies. And like the guy was in everything. He had such a wild career. It's crazy to go back to this. Like,
I'd say he's.
movies.
I mean, you know, Ryan, you were saying it in the text thread. Like Martin Sheen is just running circles around him as far as an actor goes. And I've always thought Emilio Estevez was the better actor of the two, but Charlie Sheen was the bigger of the two for I think most of his career. And he was versatile. He could do a lot, but it is funny in this movie where you're just like, oh, he's just so overshadowed.
Yeah, and it kind of, even the scenes where they're not together, I'm like, I don't think he's great in this movie, and I could just be a product of its time, but I don't know. especially next to Michael Douglas too, who's just absolutely crushing it. Even next to John C. McGinley, who's just himself.
I do
don't know,
like
he just
when you go to Charlie Sheen's filmography and you look at 1986, you have Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Platoon, and The Wraith.
hell yeah, it's a great year for films, and the
whole
reason we
trilogy.
started this podcast.
But yeah, from 86 and he's Wall Street, Platoon, Young Guns classic. I love that one. Major League.
Yeah.
But
Navy
then he's like
SEALs.
Men at Work, Navy SEALs,
Men at Work,
Rookie, Hot Shots, Loaded Weapon, Hot Shots Part 2, The Three Musketeers. Like the guy had a banging career. I give him credit.
Oh, I like the Three Musketeers. Yeah.
Me too. I love that
Wait,
movie. That is
Wait, he was in National Lampoon's Loaded Weapon?
apparently.
That was Amelia
Weapon
Westmore.
Yes.
as a cameo.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Considering it is his brother. I was always confused by the sort of Estevez Sheen thing. I was like, but they look so similar.
Emilio, Mighty Duckman himself. Swear to God.
So, in the movie, it's kind of interesting is that like watching the movie, is Gecko using him from the very beginning, or does he like? Because it's like essentially what he does is he kind of sort of sets him up as the fall boy, the fall guy, the patsy for this whole Blue Star liquidation that he's trying to pull off.
Yeah.
So
I think so.
I was unclear about Gecko's motivation. Was he always using him? Because at one point he goes, when Bud calls him out for this thing, he goes, well, look, if you were too blind to see what's going on, what you see.
I think he discovered through his naivety that he could use him. Like he capitalized on that first tip, and then he wanted to see how far he could push him. And then I think he's like, well, you're gonna give me all the info on this airline. I'm gonna buy it, and I pinky promise that I won't destroy it.
Yeah.
And what does he do? The opposite.
He goes,
But I think throughout it, he was kind of like using him. I think he was leveraging Daryl Hannah's character a little bit, because even they have that conversation, like they got something going on, but they're walking down the street, and she's like, "But I love him." And
I
you're
think
just like,
I'm falling.
Why?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, and then also like how
She
many
wants to
weeks-
sell cheap antiques. What?
Yeah.
Her motivations are very bizarre.
Yeah. I mean,
I-
strange character.
Yeah, I thought I had caught that she's not that she's trying to sell strange antiques, but she is looking to make antiques. I thought I had caught that line where she's like, "Oh, I,
think, yeah,
want to
she
make
wants to make a
antiques and
line
sell it," and I was like, "What does that mean? How is that's
Fundamentally
not how
don't
antiques
understand.
work."
Well, I don't have time to explain Raiders of the Lost Ark to you, but it's basically just that. Starring a
Her
replicant.
whole thing is that she wants everything. So she's kind of like she's got
She
a
sucks. She kind of sucks.
Yeah.
she's got a bit of the greed, the Gecko greed. It's like it's never enough. I want the finest things. I want the best stuff. I want
And
to
the
sell
worst
terrible art.
That's how she makes her money.
To rich people. I want to sell
That
rich
terrible
people.
art keeps her house hot. But there's a scene like after Bud Fox finds out that Gordon Gekko is going to like completely gut this company, one of my favorite things, he goes to sulk, and she walks into this apartment, and he's just sitting there with like a box of pizza, and she's just like, "Oh my God, what's going on? What happened to you?"
Sitting there. Yeah,
I don't want to talk about it.
The blinds in the background
crazy,
behind him are both at an angle, like he couldn't figure out blinds. And then he's just he's like Tony Montana from Scarface behind a pile of cocaine, but it's just pizza. He's just surrounded by pizza, and she's like, "Oh, he's having a
finally
meltdown. He's
finally
eating
a character
pizza."
trait I can relate to.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I understand this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she's like, don't let him push you. Like, I don't know, like what her motivations are. I don't know if she actually likes him, and honestly, I don't give a shit. I think she is terribly cast in this movie. You got to get like a Sharon Stone in there,
She would
or
have
even
been
a Sean Young.
But then I also like angry Charlie Sheen. Like I know what you mean when you talk about Martin Sheen, because Martin Sheen, I've been watching.
He
so
just
much
doesn't
more
pull it
things.
off as well.
It's
Like,
Charlie Sheen is fuck. Okay, fuck. Get up. It just
the emotions there's just something not quite there. I'm not saying he's bad, but it's just seeing him next to Martin Sheen or Michael Douglas. It was just noticeable.
he can be a good actor. I mean, we've seen
Yeah.
Platoon, we've seen The Wraith.
I've seen Terminal Velocity.
I like Terminal Velocity. Is that in Drop Zone? I was like, but I was kind of like, because who was is it not
Is
Natasha
it Wesley
Henstridge?
Snipes and
Who was Wesley Snipes was Drop Zone.
Terminal Velocity is the parachute movie. Oh no,
Yeah, they're
Drop
both.
Zone. Drop Zone's Wesley Snipes. Terminal Velocity is Charlie Sheen.
Yeah,
I'm thinking of the one with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where the getaway, right? Where
Oh,
he, he carjacks her and They have
That's
to drive
yeah,
across
and
the
then
thing with.
I only saw that once. He's driving towards the Mexican border, and there's a sex scene in the car. I remember that,
Yes,
where the
that's
car's
all
just
I remember.
weaving
Yep.
all over the road.
Great movie.
Yeah, I remember again another one of those
Young
movies-
Henry Rollins.
one of those boarding school movies I saw.
Funny crossover. Not only is that Henry Rollins, but the guy that plays the other police officer is in this movie as Gordon Gekko's like his business consultant, who is also the principal in Billy Madison.
Wow. Okay, that was 6
Whoa.
degrees of you watch too many movies.
I just had to get that. I had to spit that out.
That was, I mean, like, there's a lot of like familiar faces, like Harold Rowe Holbrook Jr. He's the kind of like the boss guy. Like you see
Yeah.
him, I've seen him in other
Yeah.
movies. He's turned up in West Wing, being hilarious just the other day. Saul Rubinek,
Yeah,
you know, whenever
he's great.
he's playing he was the lawyer kind of thing. It had a stacked cast. I mean, it's interesting that your guys are pointing out that you're right. There are certain hits and misses in this movie, but it doesn't seem to like distract or detract.
No. Mm-mm.
You know, it's still regarded as a.
I think it's still like a product of its time. That's I think that's all I can really chalk it up to. Nothing is noticeably bad. It's just fun to poke holes in a movie you've seen 1,000 times. You know?
But Michael Douglas is just. I mean, it's like, you know, we've been touching on Michael Douglas a few times in this podcast, and it's like he's so good.
So good.
Yeah.
And just
There's just a
He's so
presence
good.
about him that, like, you mentioned Richard Gere. I'm like, there's no way. And I've seen Arbitrage. All right. So I know Richard Gere could do it, but also don't watch that movie. But yeah, Michael Douglas is there's just something about him, man. He's just got that energy, and he can play a total like sleazeball. There's like something sexual about the character. Maybe it's the
something
suspenders
sexual about Michael Douglas. I know
Yeah.
it's the thing. It's just the guy, and in the 80s and 90s, the guy was
Yeah.
like, we need to get the sexiest guy to do sexy stuff in a sexy movie. Get Michael Douglas. Done.
I need someone to play Hank Pym. Got it.
He's just got that old school like Hollywood
that's
it factor. Kind of reminds me of, I'm just gonna pull a random actor, like a Kirk Douglas. He's got that same sort of quality.
Who?
You know.
They wanted to get Kirk Douglas to play Gordon Gekko's father in the sequel.
That would have been awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's the thing, and we touched on it before. I think we were talking about Basic Instinct. That I didn't know this until we got into the research, and I was looking up Michael Douglas. Is that because he was Kirk Douglas's son, because he basically was the son of Hollywood royalty?
Yeah.
He almost like wasn't getting work, and he wasn't going the acting route. He was a producer. He was an executive producer who kind of just fell into acting because the movie he was producing needed a guy, and then he just started killing it. You know, can you imagine like him going, oh yeah, no, because I'd almost argue. I mean, this will cause trouble, but I'd say that to me, Michael Douglas is more famous, bigger actor than his father ever was. I know that's
I would say
controversial.
so.
I mean,
I
especially
think
for
he's
people of
definitely
our,
better.
especially people for our generation too. I mean,
Yeah,
it's just a
I-
completely different ball game.
Yeah. I think he's better. I think he's more versatile than his dad was.
He definitely eats more pussy.
Confirmed.
As far as I know, I haven't done a deep dive on Kirk Douglas's Wikipedia page.
so to speak,
Well,
a deep dive.
I learned it
Well, I
from
think
you,
that was
Dad.
one of the. I think that was one of the questions they asked him in the McCarthy hearings, right? When during the Hollywood blacklist, I think that came up. To testify in front of Congress.
Just munching beef.
So I apologize to anyone that almost crashed their car if they're listening to this podcast while driving. That's going to
Catherine Zeta-Jones is listening to this and was like,
Oh
"Oh
my God."
Send this to Michael Douglas and Catherine Zeta-Jones. So right, getting back to Wall Street.
What were we talking about? Oh yeah, Wall
Don't
Street.
remember. He's a Sheila. Is that right? Once we find out that Gecko is going to screw over Blue Star, which is where Charlie Sheen's dad and everybody that he knows works, he goes into starting to figure out how to screw Gecko, and to do that, he goes back to Terrence Stamp. I sort of like. That's what I mean. It's like
I like that callback. Yeah.
Yeah, as in we understand, like I said, without understanding the machinations, we understand. They've introduced us to this is the head of this union, this is the head of that union. They got some faces that you could recognize. We go back to Terrence Stamp to be the guy that sort of funds it, and then Bud basically it's the end of Trading Places. He's playing both sides of the coin at the, at the
And
same
all
time.
of this happens, like this third act happens very quickly. I feel
It
like
does.
it's in like 20-30 minutes. They wrap this fucker up with a bow.
Yeah. It really does actually. That when you get that, and then he saves the airline, because Terrence Stamp does want to build. He screws over Gordon Gekko, and then walks in and is immediately busted by the SEC. We get one scene where he gets punched in the face by Michael Douglas, and we see that he got it on tape. Yeah. And then we get that wrap-up scene. You're saying very similar. There's him sitting in the car with his dad going, well, I guess you've learned some lessons. And the final shot is him walking
with
up
great
stairs.
Power comes great responsibility.
Yeah, thanks, Uncle Ben.
Yeah.
Be careful out there. And then, the last shot is him walking up the stairs to the Supreme Court to face his consequences, the end roll credits.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, so it's like, it's Will, to call back, like you're saying, sometimes Oliver Stone is not the most subtle when it comes to things that we literally have the car ride of, I hope you learned your lesson. And,
but like I've said before, every movie needs that ending freeze frame on each character that explains what they're up to. Did Daryl Hannah ever start her homemade antiquing Etsy shop? Who knows?
Did she ever figure out that glass is a good thing to put on the table so you can use it on the table?
Probably not. But
you have to wait for the sequel for that.
Did Bud Fox just go and spend the rest of his life surrounded by pizza on a sofa? We need to know these questions.
That's the dream, man.
Did anyone see the sequel?
I did.
I definitely did. I don't remember a single thing. It was Shia LaBeouf.
Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah.
I barely remember. There's something to do with like a high intensity motorbike chase scene. That's about it. That's about all I remember. I think Gordon Gekko ends up winning in the end. The end roll credits.
And I think Charlie Sheen has a cameo in that, like a brief cameo.
I barely remember. Yeah. It's one of those ones that don't bother.
Why? Like that. Talk about a movie that never should have been made. Just
But Wall Street.
But Wall Street 3 looks real good.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, Wall Street. I thought that was the GameStop one. It made like $40 million, $16 million. It got. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like I said, I believe that we did get the Oscar win for Michael Douglas as Gordon Gekko. It is seen as that sort of iconic sort of archetype of 1980s excess, and without it being done like in a flashbackian way or in a way of like back in the day, it was made in 87 and set in 85. So it's very much like, no, this is it. And the weird thing I think that they're, Michael Douglas and Charlie Sheen, they're both quoted as saying is because they're not playing good people, they're playing people who are ripping people off or not playing by the rules. How many people they get, they're in New York and they have guys walking up going, I got into being a stockbroker because I wanted to be you guys. And it's like, the wrong lessons.
This movie definitely bred a generation of scumbags for sure. And then if you weren't like I guess maybe modern day would be probably more of a Boiler Room thing. Like, I want to be Vin Diesel in Boiler Room. Or I guess Ben Affleck's character to a lesser extent. Yes. Like people commit that to memory is just.
I've definitely worked at jobs where we were having meetings and the people leading the meetings are very much like Ben Affleck in Boiler Room is their favorite guy of all time.
I've been in meetings where people just show that scene and then leave the room. What are we doing here? What was this meeting for?
They slide their Ferrari keys across the table.
Not important, yeah.
And then talk about how his house is ridiculous. So we did get Best Actor, Golden Globes, Academy Awards for Michael Douglas. Also got Worst Supporting Actress for Daryl Hannah at the Golden Raspberries, which I think we concur.
Yeah.
Like the Golden Raspberries can go fuck themselves.
She's not, and I'm trying to remember. I'm like, she's just such a. She was coming hot off of some movie. I'm assuming put in this, but she's just not great in this movie.
The only movie I really enjoyed it was Tarantino's Kill Bill. Like I liked Kill Bill where she was she was just had that sort of weird presence.
I completely forgot.
Yeah,
but I was trying to.
I did
trying to think who else would have who else. I kept. She had like much like even what's her name in Crocodile Dundee had some like very young Sharon Stone kind of energy about her. Like that, just
it's really very much we have Sharon Stone at home.
Yes,
kind of
situation. Yes.
That's right. So she was we saw her in Blade Runner 82. '84 Splash was pretty big, made a bit of a splash. Roxanne, great movie.
Oh yeah, that's
with
good.
Steve Martin.
right.
And
Steve Martin's
that's a
great,
good
yeah.
movie as well. She's
Attack
good
of the
at that.
50-Foot Woman. Sure.
Yeah.
True.
Goes on to do Steel Magnolias, Memoirs of Invisible Man. I remember from that.
Yeah, John Carpenter's Memoirs of the Invisible Man. You got to say the full title.
And then, if you get further and further into it, it's a bunch, until we get to Kill Bill in 2003.
Yeah.
There's a lot of sort of random things we'd never really heard of. She's still working, she's still doing stuff here and there, but
Still decorating.
still, she's painting the town literally red.
She's big on Pinterest.
The thing is, like, did you guys enjoy the movie? Because I did enjoy the movie, but I also didn't go, oh, what a great movie at the end. And I definitely wasn't like, you know what I'm going to do? Watch that again sometime.
No, because
kind of fun movie.
I think you're right. Like I kept saying, it is very much a product of its time, and like more entertaining movies like this have come out since. But this is such that classic archetype of this type of film,
Right. Yeah. I'm definitely not going to be in a rush to watch it again anytime soon, but I did definitely enjoy it. But it's like a lot of Oliver Stone movies, like JFK and things like that, where I'll see him once, I'm like, that was entertaining. I'll go another 2 decades.
I will watch Any Given Sunday every Sunday.
Yeah, that's different.
I will
there are
say
some movies he did where I will watch.
Of all of Oliver Stone's, I think Any Given Sunday is the one I've rewatched the most, because it is just stylistically, compelling to watch. And it's Jamie Foxx absolutely killing it, and Cameron Diaz absolutely killing it, and Dennis Quaid absolutely killing it, and James Woods being James Woods, which means he's a total prick, but he's amazing.
You listed everyone except Al Pacino.
He's just playing Al Pacino.
And the girl from Saved by the Bell. What's her name?
Yeah, Elizabeth Berkley.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's
yes.
right.
Yeah.
Turns up. Coming on. Yeah, it's like, okay, it didn't work out in Showgirls. What character am I playing? I'm a high-priced escort. Done. Let's do it.
Oh, for like a handsome, wealthy young man? Not really.
For the guy,
a 65-year-old Al Pacino.
Like him and De Niro, they're both popping out children. They're like 90 years old.
I was gonna say, I'm like, this whole thing must be really hard on his 23-year-old wife.
I was gonna say, isn't he married to someone really young?
Fucking crazy.
Yes, he has just like the both of them. Like...
I'm giving her inches. Picture him every time he busts. He's like, "Hoo-ah. Will you stop, Al? Attica. Just really rattle off all of his
quotes. Yeah, when he gets to the devil advocate quotes, that's
Al, tell me, how did you meet your eighth wife? Oh, she's got a great ass. It's too easy.
Shout out to my little friend.
Fuck. There it is. That was the one. Yeah.
All right, I'm actually sweating now. Right. All right. Well, look, all of the lawsuits coming our way. This is, by the way, everything we said allegedly, and this is parody. So you know what? It goes. We're fine. Okay, let's move on from Wall Street, because it was good. I mean, it was good. It was very, very New York City, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Of the time, it's giving us all of this sort of the vibes and the locations, and like you said, we're getting out into the Hamptons and stuff like that, which again,
you get like the inside of all these classic restaurants too. You got the little dive bars, probably in Jersey, like where his dad kind of goes.
Right.
You get his like all the penthouse and the racket club, and you get a real taste of the two, like the different sides of this. But it is very, very much New York.
Yeah.
The scene in Central Park. I don't know how or when they shot that with no other people.
That was the jarring thing. That was so jarring to me that I'm like,
crazy.
You got miles of Central Park behind you, got all the buildings. And I go, I've been to Central Park, and there's, at no point is there no human being around. And if there was no human being around, you're like, I'm about to get robbed.
Yeah. He casually walks into Tavern on the Green where the FBI agents are. Yeah. Right. I mean, it's got it definitely is New York for sure.
Well, I would say that the next movie, the one I want to talk about, the one that I brought to the table, is outrageously New York as well. And the documentary, the Will's face is amazing. No, we're going to talk about Crocodile Dundee, goddammit, the movie I've seen 150 times and I love dearly, and I get goosebumps and stuff when I love watching it because it makes me feel happy. Will,
and
ruined my
I
childhood.
just want to say, I love when Ollie comes in hot with a movie because I cannot wait to ruin it for him. Nothing brings me more joy, but I will say I love this movie, but it is terrible.
I do like how it begins very quickly by introducing us to Linda Kozlowski's character. It's back in the days of when newspapers paid rich female journalists. She's in a hotel room where you can see the Sydney Harbour Bridge, and she's going to go off into the Northern Territories to get this deep 3-4 day, how much money they paid for her to fly to Australia, because like you're saying, Australia to Americans is like the other side of the world. We get her line going, I'm a New Yorker, what's the worst that can happen? So now we know her character, and then we go to the Western Territories, and again, this movie, perfect, 5 stars.
All right, so Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
So moving on.
Yeah. No.
I did not understand at all how she found out about this guy who was attacked by a crocodile.
Journalist, Will.
I didn't understand that, and then the idea where it's like people want to learn about this guy. I was like, they do?
She learned about it from Rosie O'Donnell's character, who told her that she listened to the radio.
Oh, that's right.
Dude, his name is Michael J. Crocodile Dundee.
Yeah.
It's the rumor. So basically, she hears the rumor about some guy in the Northern Territories, bushman, who got his leg bitten off by a crocodile and crawled for a week, crawled hundreds of miles to safety. And she's like, I want to go and get that story. So she takes a helicopter. She charters a helicopter. Again, newspapers in the 80s. Well, that's where the money was. They had no idea it was coming.
Wait, this movie opens. She's not already in. She's already in Australia.
She's in Australia. Okay. She's supposed to be coming home,
right.
She's talking to her boyfriend / editor
/ piece of shit.
Which we also, he's a bit of a piece of shit. But so is she in a little way, because we also realize that her dad owns
the reveal that she is shockingly wealthy but still works for a fucking newspaper.
A reveal like 25 minutes before the end of the movie.
Yeah, it comes, she's a nepo baby. Yeah. So she is living high on her dad's. She's the princess of the newspaper owner. She's basically like Ivanka Trump, and she's boning her boss / editor as well. She must be hated in that newsroom. That's why she's sent on international missions to just spend dad's money.
Yeah, there's some reporter who's like dying to like talk about like, look, there's like a real homeless epidemic, but there's like solutions in play. Nah, we can't do that story. The boss's daughter just chartered a helicopter.
I'm taking our private newspaper plane to Australia.
Whole page 1. We've got a story about an Australian guy.
But there is something like she doesn't like any other typical movie. Like, she doesn't come off as like the stuck up snooty princess. She's still pretty grounded and kind of sweet. To him. So I think that's one of the endearing qualities that this movie has, maybe versus something else.
Yeah, and also like the fact that once we get to the outback, that she sort of shows that she's kind of like, she's spunky and she knows how to shoot a gun, and she's not like he's got a little bit of like, oh, you're just a Sheila, you can't last 5 minutes out here. And she's like, oh right. So she kind of like, she's a strong woman, but also likes to wear a thong in the outback, which was definitely
relatable.
When I became obsessed with women's bottoms, was 100%.
It wasn't Swamp Thing. It was this.
No, that's Swamp Thing. Yeah, no,
it wasn't Stand By Me. It was this. Yeah, I mean, that scene, even though like this is back in the time when like they would, I mean, I guess they still do it, but like I remember like the trailer for this, like that scene where they get into a bit of a scuffle. And she's like, fuck you, I'll meet you there. And he's like, all right, we'll take the gun. But he follows her to make sure that she's okay. And they had this scene where she takes her clothes, like she doesn't get naked, but she just changes into her swimsuit, and he like bonks his head on the tree. And it's so funny. And then she's just like filling up her canteen and a fucking crocodile jumps out. And I was like, damn, this is a legit jump scare.
I'm watching this movie. Well, the thing is, so she goes off, we go to Walkabout Creek, we meet Walter Riley. Love Walter. And then it's just, we get half-hour sort of commercial for Australia. And I find I like it. I find
I do too.
like,
I don't remember it being
charming.
so long before they like get to New York.
It's
I
just
guess they
fun.
have to establish him as this wild bushman.
Yeah,
You
so
know?
we can do the fish out of water, the croc out of
Right.
water, like
The
you're
croak out
saying.
of water, yeah.
But yeah, it's like they've instantly got chemistry. Kozlowski and Paul Hogan. Paul Hogan is just, he's like such a character, but I love it. And I just,
Yeah.
and the way that it's shot in Australia and it gives you the vibe of Australia, and it's got like, they touch on the Aboriginal thing and the fact that
Yeah.
like Croc, you know, Michael Day, Crocodile Dundee, like he was raised around the Aboriginals and stuff. And so he's got this love for Australia and he's got this love for the people. And he just like, he's kind of, I always say that Australia is like the Texas of countries, that once you get out into the bush, it's just a bunch of Texans. Just people with cowboy hats that just like you can drive pickup trucks and like to shoot guns and stuff. You know, it's pretty much,
Fair. Yeah.
pretty much.
Oh, the
what's
scene
in
does that scene is in this movie,
It's
Yeah.
very much when he shoots back as a kangaroo. Love that scene.
which
No notes. 5-star.
am I to believe that in this instance, this man lifts up a shot dead kangaroo, props it up against a tree, holds a rifle under its thing, and then these hillbillies think that the kangaroo is shooting back at them?
I did not understand what I was watching during that.
exactly
I
what's
was so lost as to like what was going on, because like you see a dead kangaroo at some
Mhm.
point,
Yeah.
but what he lifts up is like the worst. Like looks like he made it in arts and crafts class. Like kangaroo. It does not look like the dead kangaroo we just saw.
Well, they're not going to
I-
use a real dead kangaroo. I mean, you make movies, you understand that, right?
But it but it looks so bad.
Yeah, it's
Like
definitely
it's so different from what we had just seen. I
and
was
it
like,
pops up like Roy Scheider and Jaws, like
yeah,
between the trees.
like it was spring loaded.
Yeah.
It just made me be like, what is this a
And-
different thing? Like what is happening right
I just
now?
want to clarify, Will, that while we are shit talking the kangaroos of Crocodile Dundee, at some point we are going to segue to your movie where we talk about a bunch of 6-foot tall radioactive fucking turtles
That look
speak.
real as hell. I know. That are perfect.
But
But-
I think we're jumping.
But really,
jumping
oh,
ahead,
we're
but
jumping around because well, the thing about it is,
much like kangaroos.
much we're hopping around like Skippy the kangaroo. But the thing is, you believe it. So it sets up in those 30 minutes that she is she's by the end of it frothy for Crocodile Dundee because he's a bit charming. He's outdoors. He's kind of tough. He does have his knife and he does kill a crocodile and save her. And he does take a swim in the outback and just, you know, she's just a little like, woo, you know, you know, I love the music in this movie. And I love like those bits where they're swimming in that watering hole and it's just this kind of like really calm sort of, you know, almost mystical music about Australia. And it totally sucks me in. At this point, I'm just all on board for like, oh, Australia's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And again, when this came out, everyone was like, wait, Australia is a place I can go to? I mean, it really is like the travel bureau showing all of Australia and then doing a hard cut to how shitty New York is. why be here when you can go there and eat fish? I don't know.
So I have a couple questions about Crocodile Dundee, Michael J. Crocodile Dundee,
Thank you,
Esquire
Esquire.
himself.
Yes.
Is he a poacher? Is
No.
that like I was
Yeah.
so confused because like a couple characters are like, you know, oh, this person's a poacher, and then he gives them a look like, oh, don't say that in front of the lady. And I was so like, wait, is he a poacher? Is he not a poacher? But he's killing like
I
crocodiles
think
and stuff.
you're describing like the difference between like a hunter and a poacher who just kills for sport or for fun, like the people that at the bar.
I would get if they made
Yeah.
that distinction in the model, but his reactions to like what people are saying,
It's
about
unclear.
poachers,
Yeah,
I
like to
was
think he's
so
not
lost.
a poacher.
Oh,
I like to, but
it's they mention it. He just, you know, but they're also shit talking him, so he decks him in the bar.
yeah.
Later on, they are drunk going around. They're just shooting kangaroos for jokes, for shits and giggles. But yeah, no, she's not stupid. She calls him out as like,
Yeah.
oh, you were just fishing, were you? And she pulls up, you know, bullet casings from, and he's like,
Right.
oh, I wouldn't do that. That's against the law. You know what I mean? So he's just,
Yeah.
yes, he shoots crocodiles. He probably makes boots out of them and sells.
So what you're saying, he used to be a piece of shit. He's not a piece of shit anymore.
He used to.
Yeah.
be.
I just,
then
yeah, I
my-
just
my
don't-
other-
Go on.
Oh no, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, is I don't think there's any shortage of crocodiles in his particular mind. It's
Or
like,
kangaroos.
yeah.
Like, don't people from Australia say kangaroos are just like shitty deer?
Yeah.
Just drunk.
Yeah, they're basically rats
here.
there.
You ever seen a jacked kangaroo and they just start flexing and then they start decking people? Australians are fascinating people. But Will, more questions that I can help clarify why this movie is perfect.
My other question is Paul Hogan himself. I was reading up a little bit on this movie, and basically he just pitched like, what if there was a movie starring me and I was Australian? And then they just open their checkbook. They're like, yeah, how much money do you need to make it? Was he like
$11 billion dues. Yeah, I don't know any like Paul Hogan from anything other than.
Well, he was a comedian in Australia. He had the Paul Hogan show.
Quotes,
and
comedian.
And people had seen him. He had been like in a Foster's ad or something. So he was like a beer guy. So these commercials had shown in America. These commercials had shown sort of internationally of him like having a beer. And that's kind of
like as that character almost like kind of like a Ted Lasso type of thing.
I was gonna say like an Ernest character or something. Was it like that? Like he was in a series of commercials and they just made movies of that character?
It wasn't him being Crocodile Dundee. It was just him being an Australian, like
right.
he's tanned, he's leathery, he's got blonde hair, having a pint, total Aussie guy. So he just kind of, Northern Territoried him. Like I said, you've got Texas and then you've got West Texas, which is basically because you've got Australia where 99% of people live on the coast in the cities and then 1% of them live in the bush, which is the size of North America. It's absolutely wild. You've got to be a certain type of person to live out there. And I like that Crocodile Dundee, you buy him as that sort of beer drinking, sort of like outdoors kind of like killer. The bit where he casually kills a snake and just like, snaps its neck and like, it's just even I'm a little bit like, oh man, he's like a real man's man. Like,
I love the bit where he comes across his like they're camping at night and they hear something and it's one of the Aboriginal people and they just know each other. That the twist is so great. The guy looks at his watch like.
I love that bit. Yeah, he looks at Wally's and like Walter's watch, and then he goes, looks up, it's 2:30. We should get a move on. And like, so he's a little bit full of shit. And it's like when he's like the Aboriginals, like his buddy.
Well, he's trying to impress her too. Like, I think that's
like,
kind of the charm of it.
How does he find his way? He thinks his way. He's doing this whole mystical thing, and then you hear the buddy trip over and go, "Oh shit!"
Shit. Yeah, that was good. That was good. Yeah.
So I'm like, I love this movie. Anyway, okay, so it then sets up the New York of it, which is she decides to bring him to New York, do the fish out of water story, and we get like just
and there's no convincing. It's just like a hard cut to them on the plane.
Yeah, and it's like him freaking out.
Well,
yeah. much like when they bring the gorilla in Congo to the Congo.
Amy,
it's just a bizarre like
this movie.
A much better movie, I'd say.
Amy,
just get me Paul Hogan in a Nintendo Power Glove sign language to chimpanzees.
Amy enjoys the movie Twister.
That was good.
Well, what does Amy know?
But yeah,
I know what you're going to say, Will. The jarring cut.
Yes, there is a. This should have come with a trigger warning. There is a plane taking off shot, and then hard cut to the Twin Towers, which I was like, oh dear.
Every single one of these movies has the New York establishing shot of the Twin Towers. In fact, Wall Street did it like 7 times in a row. It was the same buildings from different angles.
You might forget you're in New York. Yeah.
So wait,
it's almost as though New York is a character in this movie itself.
It's like the 5th member of Sex and the City. But yeah, that's where for me, that's the first like boom I ever had of New York was Crocodile Dundee, and it was then followed up pretty quickly with Ghostbusters.
I thought you were saying Crocodile Dundee 2.
Yeah, were the 2 movies that I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
New York's huge. It made me kind of like weirdly uncomfortable. You get those long lens shots of 10 people, so it's like thousands of people.
It's called the Tootsie shot because that was the first time it was ever used in the movie Tootsie.
Nice. Yeah. I understand that reference. Because Tootsie Pops are this thing that no, I'm kidding.
Nailed it.
But then we get that fun kind of fish out of water element of that's where, I guess for me as well, as the foreigner, we go along for this like exploration of New York.
And it's great. It's so great.
Because he charms everybody.
Everybody.
Like, the cops love him. The hotel workers love him. The prostitutes love him. The hoi polloi love him. The transsexuals love him. He's just a charming Australian fella. just, I get
The
it.
bit when he's in the bar, so it's like his first night in town. They go out to a fancy dinner, and you find out that her fiance is kind of a dick.
He's definitely threatened by
Yeah.
their sort of banter and their connection. So he's just being he's already drunk by the time they turn up at the restaurant.
Yeah.
It's a really fancy one. He's deliberately scusi, he starts ordering in Italian, tries to force Mick to order it and stuff like that. He's just trying to belittle him. And I do love the bit where he goes, "Oh, we'll sit over there," and just decks him.
Yeah.
Really good.
And apparently decks him so hard that he is like semi-conscious for the rest of the night. Like he's suffered
that's the
severe brain bleeding.
That's the cocaine.
And nobody's addressing it.
He was drunk. That's what he was. But no, he just hit him on the reset button. You just deck some guy right there on the chin. That turns their lights off. I just love that. I love the sound of the punch sound effects.
Oh, it's straight from like Raiders of the Lost Ark too. It's like that classic.
They are Indiana Jones level punches, man. I love it. They are meaty punches.
They really sell it. Yeah.
There are plenty of them. But
he's great. And he's not a big guy. Like he's not like a Hemsworth. Like this movie wouldn't work with like a Chris Hemsworth. Actually, it might. But like I think the fact that he's just a normal sized dude.
He's wiry.
He's wiry.
He wrestles crocs. He's got nice arms.
But he's got a knife.
He's got a fucking knife as well. Yeah.
But yeah. So sorry. They go out to the dinner. He belittles him. He gets punched in the face. And then he's like, you know what? I want to explore the city. So he befriends his cab driver, which is fucking insane to me. He's like, "Hey man, you want to go for a drink?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm just getting off."
Yeah,
but then they go to this bar.
He's Australian, and I've talked about this before, like not necessarily on the podcast, but like there is a certain weird bulletproof vest that is being the Brit in places you're not supposed to be in America. Like I've gone into parts of town that people are like, "Oh my god, you went there," and I'm like, I'm dressed in a tuxedo, and I go into the specific sort of like grocery store where everybody looks at me like, I am like the brightest guy in this place, and I walk in wearing a tuxedo and I go, "Oh, hello, do you have any water that I can buy?" And everyone's like, "Who are you? Where are y'all from?" Like everyone just wants to get your story because you're like, "What?" And that's kind of the reaction that New York has to Nick Dundee.
It's now clear why you love this movie so much.
That I am
basically your biography.
Yeah, I don't know why you're still walking around grabbing people by the pussy. But if I've taken one thing away from this movie, it's don't do that. Even if it's hilarious. Because I remember getting to this scene at the bar and I had to text you. I'm like, oh no, this is it.
Yeah. If you want to see a movie with a funny transsexual sexual assault, you found it.
Right. Well, it's okay because the entire bar laughs about it, so it's fine.
Yeah.
So it's okay.
But I love the scene where the cool black guy shows up and he's talking to Mick and he's like, "Hey man, what's good, brother?" And he doesn't know how he doesn't know how to respond.
Yeah, tie another one on, mate. And he's like, "What?
Yeah.
What?" Like they're both communicating in a way that they don't understand, but then
he learns the dope handshake. And it's charming. But yeah, then he meets the Sheila. the Sheila.
The Gila.
She's a guy.
That's what I'm trying to explain to you. It's a dude. But the thing is,
it's not like in Train Spotting where he gets her like, because I remember I was like, "Oh man, does he like get her
horror?
back?" Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's great. I mean, the thing is, what he's doing is because he comes from Walkabout Creek where there's only 12 people and everyone knows everybody. Yeah. And he's like, if you ever need someone to know somebody, just tell Walter and he'll tell everybody.
Yeah.
So like he's in the cab on the way to the hotel or in the limo. And he's just saying hi to people outside. Yeah. "Oh, how you doing, Mick Dundee? Maybe I'll see you around." Like that whole like people are just like, "What?"
Yeah.
And like he does the same thing with he doesn't realize the prostitutes are prostitutes. He just thinks they're lovely Sheilas. They're, "Oh, ladies, what you up to?" And then
here's the crazy thing: is the prostitutes know who he is. They've been reading the paper. The gal in this movie is such a fast writer, and it gets her story to the press. And like people are like, "You're the Australian guy." It's like
at that time there was
there
was only one Australian person in all of New York. The world was a buzz.
Nobody in New York has heard of Australia in this, so they're all like, "Whoa!"
Well, this is a time before Yahoo Seriously was incredibly popular in New York.
Oh,
so for those of you who are under the age of 40, got that joke.
Yahoo Serious. But you get, it's fun that it's like he's just got that weird sort of charm, and like he's just because he is an outdoorsy bloke that does wrestle, crocodiles, that he can just get into situations or meet people or places.
He's not.
and
He's
like,
got no fear. You know.
yeah.
He's not.
Oh, I can always just punch a guy. Like, or I've got my.
It's
knife.
weird that works a lot. Yeah.
I've tried it.
And
It doesn't work.
and by the way, the second time he like does that is like when the rich family
dogs.
has like their Rottweilers that they just let loose
Mhm.
like on their property and just I guess randomly attack like dinner guests. I did not understand. There was a lot of things in this movie where I'm like, am I like watching an alternate universe? Like what is happening?
It's just all stuff to make him look like a badass, really.
And he is bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
That's
just
the only thing I could like.
So does he
figure.
have special powers? Who's to say?
There was a lot of things in this movie, the way it was directed, where there were like weird, like long pauses and shots that lingered too long. And I was watching it the entire time, like, what is going on? Am I watching a weird cut of the movie? And I realized I'm like, oh, this is where people are supposed to be laughing. And so that's why these shots are going on too long. And because I wasn't laughing, I was just sitting there like, what did they forget to call cut? Like, was the editor just watching the movie like, oh crap, I gotta go to another scene?
I was.
But
laughing.
that's what
Fuck
was
yeah.
happening.
Yeah, I was laughing too. I'm not sitting there. Will has no sense of humor. No details.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you go like he beats up the pimp. He
Twice.
Hilarious.
yeah, I love it. No, he goes. My favorite.
This is all on the first night, mind
my
you.
favorite part
Yes.
is, and it was cut out like of the version I had because I recorded it off TV. But it's the guy doing cocaine in the
Oh
kitchen.
yeah.
And he's so naive, and he's like, "Oh man, you all stuffed up. Oh, I'll show you how we do it." And he takes the cocaine, puts it in hot water,
Off
stirs
the
it up,
mirror, then dumps his vial
Yeah.
in there.
puts the thing over the guy's head, and breathe it in, and it's just so funny.
And he's trying it. He's like, it's like, and in my mind, I'm like, is this working for him? Or is he I wonder if people tried that.
Just waste thousands of dollars of cocaine
Yeah.
to try this trick this on Crocodile Dundee.
Oh
And
my
he's
God.
just so blissfully naive. She's like,
Yeah.
no, it's cocaine, it's a drug, you do it. And he's like, what fool? You know?
Yeah, exactly. She's like, "Oh, to feel like a buzz." He's like, "I don't get it." As he's always like just pounding martinis like they're water.
Martinis, yeah.
He's just
But even like when she's explaining therapy to him, and she's like,
right.
he's like, wait, you paid money to talk to someone to talk about your problems? Like, doesn't he have any friends?
Yeah,
You know?
I
That's
do
great.
like it. It's kind of like Australian 80s Ted Lasso in a way.
Yeah.
It's
yeah,
like, they realized that they were the croc out of water the whole time. And they just needed a little bit of Australia, and that they learn a little bit about themselves.
Yeah.
Like, let's talk about the best scene in the entire movie that I rewound and watched 3 times because it's perfect.
Mhm.
But the mugging scene where the guy comes up and he's like, "Hey man, you got the time?" And then like, "Give me your wallet." And I love his reaction because like he's like, "Give me your wallet." He's like, "Why?" And
What
it's like,
for?
he's got a knife and he scoffs in this way that, oh, give the guy an Oscar for. It's not a knife. Like, shink, that's a knife. And
He's just had that on him this whole time.
yes,
Just-
Yeah.
you see it.
It just
it's in the
is
back.
always carried this
even
12-inch
like
blade.
because it is established that he's got this blade because when he's like walking around exploring the city and he's trying to cross the street and to a point where I remember him like running across the cars, but he's just climbed up on the pole and a police officer on a horse picks him up and brings him back to the hotel and then just like, oh, by the way, here's your knife. Fucking
You're
insane.
gonna need
What-
that. It's 80s New York. You're probably gonna
Yeah.
want a gun, mate.
You imagine the cocaine you could do off of that knife, though. All of it. All
People
of
in
it,
the
all of it.
80s were salivating over it. Be like, oh, imagine.
Dude, that made Rambo's knife look tiny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was thinking of that.
If you're talking inches, that's a knife. I love that scene. It's the best. This movie.
Well, it's the most iconic scene from this movie.
Yeah.
It's the one everybody, even people who never seen the movie, quote. It's
I've only seen the Simpsons parody, so I don't.
yeah. So you played Knifey Spoony before.
Am I remembering, was Paul Hogan in that episode, that Australia episode of The Simpsons?
I'd put
I
almost.
cameo?
I'd put
I think
money
he
on
had to be. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, everybody was in The Simpsons back then. You know what I mean?
Mm.
But seriously, okay, so Will, as much as you are questioning everyone's decisions, the script, and everything about this movie, did it not charm you in just the slightest way. Like once you got towards the end, like
Were there not enough twisters?
Definitely a lack of twisters.
Twisters.
Here was my reaction to this movie. At a certain point, I paused it to be like, we have to be towards the end. And then I had an hour left of the movie to go. And I was like, oh my God.
Thank God.
It's just like, I don't know. This just really was not hitting me.
Wow.
I think had I seen this movie younger, I probably would be more into it. But being that this was like my first real watch, there was just so many questions where I'm like, I am missing some cultural context of our familiarity with Australia at a certain point. Because I'm like, I don't get this, why everyone's like, what is Australia? And I actually did not think that Paul Hogan, and then I'm sorry, I forget the lead,
Linda Kozlowski.
Yeah, I actually did not think they had any chemistry. Like in that way, we're like,
see when he's in the bathtub. Come on,
click. Sorry, just again, going to write a little note down here. Will has no soul. Okay, great. Okay, let's move on.
I don't know. It's kind of in that way where like you'll see like real life couples like in movie who are playing love interests in movies. Almost always to me, I'm like, this is not coming across like the way they want it to. But I don't know. I was just. I was excited to watch it because I'm like, I haven't seen this movie. This is a classic. And just as I was watching it, I was like, I don't understand.
Make a good point. Like, I think being of this age, like when this movie came out, it was such a big deal. And like everyone saw it, like much like a Karate Kid or something. It was just a cultural phenomenon film. So you said this was your first time seeing it?
First time seeing it.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But I had seen the terrible sequels.
But
I had never seen this.
That's my line. I get it. And I think a lot of like, it's such a typical fish out of water story that there have been other films that much like a Wall Street have done a better modern take, but this is such like a classic take on it. But
and I'll say, like, not to skip to the end too early, but where he's walking across everybody, like to get to her at the subway, the only thing I could think is I'm like, you're gonna walk on you're walking on people's heads to get over. Your feet have been on the New York City like ground. There is like urine
when she's
and broken
running,
glass, and when like you're putting that in people's heads.
She is running to the classic, except it's not at an airport, it's in the New York fucking subway, where she has to run to, he's going on his walkabout, where he just kind of fucks off for a bit. And she has to run after him. And she
takes her shoes off.
She takes her shoes off, and then she goes down into the subway, which is, oh boy,
insanity. Just total insanity at the end there.
She's gonna need a tetanus shot after this one.
Favorite part of the movie for Ollie? Because I love that part of the movie because he's going.
It's great. I love when she's yelling to someone who's yelling to someone else, and
I love that bit. Perfect. 5 fucking stars. No,
but then the movie just kind of fucking ends. Like it just.
Yep. Yeah, it does actually. Well, let's back up just a little bit before we just rush to the end of Crocodile Dundee. We're going to get into the great detail about my favorite scene, but I found quite interesting. I was on this rewatch is how like her dad, so the billionaire owner of the newspaper, and she's like, he's dropping her off at the hotel because she's like, I'm not going to marry your editor who's been paying to fly me around the world because I'm in love with this bushman from Australia. And the dad's like, well, okay. And he's like, you go, baby. I'm like, well, like,
also, here's your knife.
But like, no, man, I love that scene. I love the music that's playing, the dun, 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 dun. You got the didgeridoo going at the same time. She kicks her shoes off. She's absolutely tearing it across New York. He's walking into the train station. It fills up with all these people. And then you've got this like, you could do this on stage. You could do Crocodile Dundee on stage. And you do it, and you've got the characters, and they're easily identifiable characters. The one guy with the orange hat, he's definitely a construction worker. And then the tallest guy, like, and he's like, he's got like his red band on his head, so you know him. And then they play telephone up and down the subway. And like, I love you. I love you. I love you. Because she loves him. She loves him. Will has no heart.
And I mean, she's in both sequels, so I guess it works out.
They were married for like 25 years.
Meh.
And then the other awesome bit when he walks across and everyone holds him up and they get to each other and then they fall in love and the credits roll and you ruined my favorite movie. You guys have done it again.
Well, we're also forgetting one major part of the film where Paul Hogan gets into he sees the prostitutes, but they're not the prostitutes that he knows. They're two different prostitutes that have the same pimp.
Yeah, he's a busy
gets into a fight, goes for his knife. Don't have my knife. And
Reginald Bell Johnson.
He's one hit knocked out. Yeah.
Carl Winslow hits a guy with his limousine.
Yeah,
kills him probably,
which is awesome. Yeah.
This is how Carl Winslow became the detective. He flew to LA, killed a kid. This is the trauma that caused him to work with John McClane. But he rips the TV for the longest time. You'd see like as a kid, those limousines drive around with that thing on the back. I never knew as a kid, I never knew it was like a TV antenna. So it was cool to see, like, if you saw one of those, you're like, oh shit, there's a TV in this car? That's crazy.
It was. You were actually so right about that. You'd see that shit. Wow. Yeah. He's like, what tribe are you from? You know, you're a black fella, aren't you?
Yeah.
Whole lot of yikes there.
Yeah. But he kind of leans into it and he's like, but that's the testament to how charming Paul Hogan is in this. Everyone just fucking loves him. And I love in the next scene, he's like screwing the antenna back onto the car. Great call.
Okay. So that part is when I lost my mind. I was sitting there like, okay, so Carl Winslow saves Paul Hogan. Okay. But then for him to be the one who uses a boomerang in the movie, using that TV antenna as like a boomerang to throw it at the guy. I was just like, okay, a boomerang thing has not been set up in the movie before. This is just happening right now.
Straya.
And to have a non-Australian be the one who's like, I'm going to do it. I was like, what is happening? It just all of a sudden, like, he's just like, oh, I met an Australian guy. Now I inherently know how to use a makeshift boomerang.
It's like I said,
that's xenophobic, man.
They were the Crocs out of the water the entire time. They just had a little bit of Australia in their life. And it's going to be
along the way. Yeah.
Absolute insane screenwriting decision. I did not understand what was happening anymore.
I think it would have been so expected. It would have been so expected if Paul Hogan used the boomerang. I think the fact that
the person it would have made sense for it to do, yes. That
Wait, but he used a tin. He used a can of food earlier, to take out somebody. So he's like, hey, let other people do it. He did it in the American way, then the American did it in the Australian way. It's called it's symmetry.
The crossover event.
But how would that occur to the limo driver? I didn't understand.
Well, absolute it's been insanity. In the newspaper that he's from Australia, man. Journalism, baby.
Everybody reads that article in New York.
It's just the one newspaper. Yeah.
Yeah.
This movie's terrible and terribly written. $8 million movies made $328 million. I guess everyone agrees with you, Will. What a piece of shit.
I don't think there were enough boomerangs in this movie.
It would have been okay had the Australians set up the boomerang for Carl Winslow to be like, "Oh,
you want more if you want more boomerangs, go watch the Eddie Murphy movie Boomerang."
That's next on my list. I'm gonna go pick up that boomerang.
This oh my god! This movie was the highest grossing. Wait. Crocodile Dundee, it went on to gross 40 million in Australia. It was the highest grossing film of all time there after 11 weeks.
And there's only one movie theater there.
In Walkabout.
That's everyone in Australia saw this movie.
It remained number one for 9 weeks. Second highest grossing film that year for the studio and the United States box office. So it's like...
This is 86,
It was a fucking mega hit. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
This movie was huge. Big in Australia.
I'm trying to remember what was the top. Oh, it was Top Gun, I think, was top for 86.
Probably 86. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like the same year. Like, we had you had Star Wars and the second biggest movie of the year, Smokey and the Bandit.
Right. Yeah.
Which is also 5 stars, no notes, perfect movie. Absolutely.
I will agree with that. No notes for that movie.
So right. So we've ruined my childhood. Let's take aim at Will's.
A perfect movie that is above criticism.
Oh, my internet's cutting out. I got.
let's segue into talking about 1990s Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, to say that Will was excited about doing this movie on the podcast is probably the biggest understatement that could be spoken on this podcast. Will has some very deep love for movies, but in particular, this movie. Will, where did it come from? Tell us all about it. 5 stars, no notes, perfect movie.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I had seen this as a kid. So this is 1990. So I was like 4 when this movie came out. I was probably one of the first movies I saw in theaters. And I have been a Ninja Turtles fan ever since, like hardcore. Love the comics. I have the figures from this movie like above my door right now. And I have the Blu-ray box set. That's the pizza box that contains like all these movies. So I could not be a bigger Turtles fan. And I saw the new one this summer at Paramount and loved it.
I haven't watched that. I've heard it's great. That's the Seth Rogen produced one, right?
Yeah,
fantastic.
Yeah,
no,
it's on
I
Paramount. I just haven't
killer
watched it.
soundtrack. Yeah.
So I guess it's a core memory for you. Like I said, it's like that first movie experience, that first big movie. I mean, yeah, in the way that Crocodile Dundee used to be a core memory for me.
Yeah, this and like the original, like the Batman Michael Keaton movie. I had him on VHS.
Yeah,
it'd pretty much be a rotation. Like
everyone like had that Turtles VHS too. Like you can you can see the big type with them peeking out of the manhole. Everyone had that. It was weird.
I mean, so Will, like, you know, I'm like 42. So I remember when this movie came out in 1990. So yeah, I'm like 9 years old. So it would have come out probably later the next year in the UK. It used to be in the Times, you know, 6 months later, it would make its way across the pond. But I remember when the cartoon came out, and like I said, I was saying, you know, Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles in the UK, but I'm Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles. Like
they didn't eat pizza. They had salad.
That was the only change. But like, I was always the biggest Raphael fan. Raphael was my turtle. He's cool but rude. You know, Michelangelo, he's a party dude. But like that show was gargantuan. Even in the UK, it was fucking enormous. And then my favorite arcade game to play was the side-scrolling Super
the beat 'em up
Ninja Turtles. Like they looked. I'd never seen a game that looked like the actual cartoon. The animation was incredible. I pumped so much money into those things just to grind that out. It was so fun playing with 3 other people, so you could be all 4 turtles. Yeah. You know, and it was like you wanted the turtle van, Bebop and Rocksteady and Krang, and all these like what's the pink?
Krang.
Yeah, Krang.
Krang, yeah.
And Shredder is like the dad from it's Will's dad, Uncle
from Fresh Prince.
Yeah, from the Fresh Prince. That was so big. So when they announced this movie, Will, I even remember like we were in the changing room after gym class or something, and it just, oh my God, have you heard? The Ninja Turtles, there's a movie. It was like that. It was like that. It was like, oh my God, they're doing it like for real? And you got very excited. So like Ryan, did you have a similar kind of like?
Oh yeah, I was obsessed too. I remember I'm pretty sure I saw this. I would have been like 7. I'm pretty sure I saw this in the theater. I used to draw Ninja Turtles like all the fucking time. I still do. But man, like I had turtle fever for sure. And not the actual sickness you get in Australia. Just
right. From licking and eating
licking turtles and toads and other. Yeah, by the way, this is 3 movies in a row with amphibious characters. We got crocodiles, turtles, and Gordon Gekko. Gordon Gekko, who sounds like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles villain.
Yeah.
Wow. Honestly, you son of a bitch.
I know Mondo Gecko's one, but it just made me think. I was like, Gordon Gekko. That sounds like that's Mondo Gecko's father, who's into stock trading.
Who runs Wall Street? Yeah.
But this movie, I remember, and Ryan and I have talked about this before. Will, it's a little tiny bit before your time, but we would on Saturday mornings there'd be these 20-minute features on these movies coming up, and everyone was talking about the animatronics. On these turtles, and watching the movie in 2023, it's still
crazy. Like
incredible. Yeah. Those turtle outfits are astounding. But their heads, they're scowling or eyes, and they're just I remember seeing, the puppeteers. So you've got like 4 or 5 guys sitting off to the side, and they're puppeteering everything with their hands, and how it was all computerized, and how much it weighed. And these guys their heads are in the middle of these like robotic machines.
It must have been like absolute nightmare. And this was like an independent
Yeah.
film. Like this didn't cost a ton of money to make. Like it was,
Yeah.
but it was one of the highest grossing independent films like of all time.
It was Golden Harvest. As soon as I was like, oh my God, it's like the Hong Kong movies. It's
Yeah. That's
like,
what
wow.
I know them from, is like all those like Hong Kong action films. And the turtle suits, they look amazing. Only thing that's a bit of a giveaway is at the neck, where you can see like that's the only part. But
that's
they fixed it in
that's
part
not
2.
real shell.
Yeah.
Yeah. You could tell it's
in
like
part
a
2 they
foam
fixed the
latex,
neck part and it looks phenomenal.
I just know, but their arms and so it genuinely, it's genuinely.
Plus the way it's lit too,
good.
like it kind of covers up like any kind of imperfections because the way it's shot and filmed, which is like this really dark. Like I don't think people, because when you get the cartoon, it's always like light and colorful and fun, but this movie was like really dark and gritty, more taken from like the Eastman and Laird comic books of its time.
They took that show,
badass,
and they took that comic and they shook it up, and it came out exactly as it should be. It gave
too violent.
It gave us what we wanted from there's Shredder, there's Splinter, there's the guys, there's their weapons, there's the colors and everything else. There's
Sam Rockwell,
yellow. There's Casey Jones in his mask, and it's like, but like you're saying, it's also gritty and almost noir-like and dark and backlit, and like when Raphael's going out in his hat to
atmospheric, and because like it's that atmosphere that really builds up the whole like the New York aspect of it. Like it's not them skateboarding in the sewers fighting the Foot Clan. It's just kind of the steam and like just the atmosphere of the film itself just felt very New York, even though none of it was shot there.
There is a scene of them skateboarding in the sewer while fighting the Foot Clan. I'm like, and that's skateboarding.
Well, you gotta have that.
Yeah, you guts to have it. If you're gonna, you guts to have the turtles.
The crazy thing is, back then, a large pizza was $10.
Yes,
delivered.
Oh, better times.
Troubling looking pizza.
But he puts what drives me crazy. They order the pizza from the sewer grate, because they're turtles, obviously, but he puts the pizza down like long ways sideways. So just what? And then they bring the pizza in and it's totally fine. I call bullshit.
Yeah,
that's part of their ninja training. Is they learn how to like get a pizza down. Perfectly.
There's these 4 6-foot tall turtles. There's the ancient rat that learned the ancient art of ninjutsu from watching his master. But you know what? Putting a pizza sideways, that's a step too far.
That's where I draw the line. Yep.
Suspension of disbelief. It just took you completely out of the
It's just it's a way to ruin a perfectly good pizza. And I don't appreciate that.
Neither would the turtles. This movie though shouldn't be as good as it is, but it weirdly is a good movie for a Turtles movie. As in, it just does it's like we've said before, the Ron Seal, Quick Drawing Woodstein of movies. It gives us a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, but I think 4 Golden Globes or Oscars should be given to the stuntmen in those suits.
Absolutely.
Because the physical acting that they're doing in connection with the voice acting of other people, in connection with the animatronic acting of these faces, while then at the same time performing some pretty incredible flips and things like that, fights, kicks, punches, and being quite intricate with these weapons in their hands, with 3 big gargantuan turtley fingers. I'm like, how are they making this work? How are they?
I think it's a testament to how incredible the work Jim Henson did was. And I mean, to a lesser extent, if you had like a Stan Winston or something, it would have been but to have the master puppeteer of his time making these turtles. I mean, he's already perfected frogs, so for him to jump to turtles was the next logical thing.
Absolutely. And then Turtles 2 was like the last thing he ever worked on.
Yeah.
Before he died, unfortunately. But it's like the puppeteering in this movie is just really incredible. Like the subtlety and the emotion they're able to get out of them.
I couldn't believe it.
So impressive for the time.
You can
Pork rind.
Pork rind.
But
you can genuinely register anger or upset or like surprise or comedy on their face.
I haven't seen the Michael Bay did the or maybe he produced the
Yeah,
He
the
produced
Michael,
them,
I didn't
yeah.
watch
3D
those
ones.
either.
I'm like, I haven't seen them, so I can't speak. But I think it's credit to the most recent one where they're actually teenagers. I think
Yeah.
people lose that fact. Like these just act like 25-year-old kid, like guys who just really
Yeah.
like pizza and beating up Foot Clan members.
Yeah, the turtles in like all the incarnations are pretty. Like, they never
Yeah.
play at the teenage aspect. That was
Yeah.
funny watching the new movie and how much they were on their phones.
Yeah, it's cool.
I was like, oh right, they're teenagers.
Yeah. I think it really captures that, like that angsty feeling. They're
Yeah.
they're going through changes in their body. They're no longer tadpoles. They're turtles. Oh wait, that's
Yeah.
rocks. I don't know, same.
I will say, as much as I enjoy the new movie, something, and I kind of told you guys about Splinter in this movie. The new movie, the only thing I didn't like was Splinter. I didn't care for his characterization because in this movie, the thing about Splinter's character in this, and I'm going to jump ahead a little bit to the campfire scene where they use the Force, the ninja version of the Force. I don't get it, but they use the Force to like talk to Splinter, and he just uses his last moments just to tell him like, "Hey, I love you guys." Like it's not a moment where it's like, if you wanted to defeat Splinter, here's his weakness. It's not that at all. He's like, I'm your dad. You guys have completed this. I just want you to know that I love you. If that's the last thing I say to you.
What if Splinter's weakness was a boomerang?
Oh, whoa.
Holly, everyone's weakness is a boomerang.
His only weakness is bullets.
My favorite Harold and Kumar line. I love that. But yeah, no, that was when they have that weird Jedi moment.
Mhm.
Because you have that scene. God, this it's so weird. Like, it's so weird watching this again, for this podcast. I know we say that all the time, but every now and again, you're like, oh, these were turtle tinted glasses. I was watching this thing when I was a kid. So rewatching it, I'm like, there's certain things that don't work. But again, like, I'm not a 7-year-old boy anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So like, my enjoyment of this is very different. But yeah, Leonardo, like, I don't even remember how they get to this, but like, Raphael gets kidnapped. They got to leave their sewer home to go up to the Catskills with Casey Jones. And
one of the foot soldiers follows them back to their lair because they follow Raphael, I believe.
Oh yeah, the kid.
Because he's carrying April because she got mugged. So then their house gets rumbled. Splinter gets kidnapped. They kind of go to hide at April's place. You get that very funny scene of them hiding, like you're like, wait a minute, where are they? Raphael's on the rooftop. He's getting grumpy. Then he gets beaten up. I remember watching this movie and being surprised and a bit frustrated to begin with because the turtles are getting their ass kicked. They're not really winning. And
it's like Batman Year One. Like, they haven't figured it out quite yet.
Right. And then you get, a lot of ass kicking later, which gives you that sort of that joy. But as a kid, I'm so used to watching the show where they just keep winning. And then, of course, my favorite is Raphael. And he's just left alone on a rooftop getting ever-living shit kicked out of him. And that was quite traumatic.
I think that him as a character of the four he's got just a bit more depth than the others. I'm like, you've got Michelangelo's the party dude, whatever. You got Donatello's the smart one. Leonardo, who's like the
reluctant leader.
Yeah.
He's basically Cyclops from X-Men.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Raph is more like Wolverine, who thinks Leonardo's a bitch.
Yeah.
He's got the most depth. I like.
Yeah, I didn't like the voice acting on Raphael.
He's a Brooklyn guy.
Hey,
that's how you know they're from
what
New
you
York.
doing? Hey.
Yeah, and a lot of I think we joked about this in the sequel. It's like a lot of the script and the references were written by like a very old white dude, like the Humphrey Bogart thing. Maybe that was popular. Maybe that was the thing in the comics. I don't know, but like I do love Humphrey Bogart Raphael wearing the only thing the disguise he's using is a trench coat and a hat. Yeah. And even when he jumps over the hood of the car, a guy goes, "Was that a giant turtle?"
Look like a big turtle in a trench
Anyway,
coat.
you're going to LaGuardia.
You're going to LaGuardia, right?
Yeah. His disguise in early 90s New York is that of a flasher.
Yeah. And just nobody bats an eye. They're just like, giant turtle, whatever.
Hey, this is New York. What are you going to do about it?
I think there's also a character in the cartoon or the video game who's played by a crocodile who is Australian. Named like Leatherface, Leatherback, something like that.
Is that just
honestly,
reference to the fact that
somebody look at that.
Paul Hogan has a leathery face? which he does. He's been in the sun a lot. Really quickly, the plot of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, in case you needed to know it, is four radioactive turtles that were found in the sewer by similarly radioactive pet
rat
from Japan that ended up in New York somehow. I don't even question the flashbacks of a little rat in a,
But even that still looked so good. Like the little animatronic was great. Like,
and I loved the
perspective.
toddler turtles.
Yeah.
Just again, okay. It was so, and it weirdly sort of Scorsese-esque theatrical lighting moments of like the background goes black and just a light on the sort of thing. But the crux of it is there is a crime wave in New York. Crime wave.
And a crime wave? He's not in this movie.
It turns out it's from teenagers, and you've got some quite funny sort of like really nice sort of
dude, those like those cowboy switches they're doing like were really like when they empty out that the van, like that stuff's really cool. But I love how it's not drugs or it's like it's just like
VHSs.
little CD players.
They're the crew from the crew from the first Fast and Furious. They're stealing like stuff like that.
But as a kid, I was like, oh man, I want to run away from home and skateboard in this fucking creepy warehouse. And it's kind of like in like Little Monsters when they go into when he brings Fred Savage down, it's like all the kids partying, like, yeah, that's unsupervised behavior, man. I want that.
I was watching the movie when Mrs. got home, and like she just walks in. I'm like, man, this teenage criminal hangout's dope. They got arcade games. They got like, hey, you got cigarettes? You got menthol. Whatever you like. Hey, Sam
Rockwell. It's got everything.
I said Sam Rockwell, Skeet Ulrich, and the guy from Party of Five. I can't remember his name. I said it. Doesn't matter.
Jennifer Love Hewitt.
Yeah.
Yes. Here's the thing about that hideout specifically. Is that I can't tell you how many times I've had friends be like, oh, I went to this bar. It's just like the hideout from Ninja Turtles. And I'm like,
I fucking hope not.
And I show up and it's like a regular bar with like a couple Nintendo 64s. And I'm like, no.
You misunderstood.
I need arcade machines.
They have the Turtles arcade game there.
I need people skateboarding through the bar.
Yes, I need a skate
or
ramp.
Also like the bar in Hackers where they're just rollerblading through the thing, playing Wipeout on a giant fucking TV. Guys, why aren't people doing this?
Club owners, take note. What we want are skate ramps inside the bar with arcade machines.
Specifically the three of us.
Yeah. And Sam Rockwell selling us cigarettes. That's what we want.
And maybe, listen, hear me out. Maybe a side room for some light ninja training.
Absolutely.
Some sparring. What could possibly go wrong? Underage, hear me out. Like underage arcade bar with a fight ring and stolen goods.
That's all I wanted as a kid.
Yeah. Sounds perfection.
No Australians.
Oh my god.
You can call it Hogan's Alley.
Oh my god. You're killing me this week. This movie though. So it's like we said, so there's that sort of, again, kind of dark. And there was a reaction to this movie. That's why in the sequel, they lighten it up. No one gets to use their weapons. It's a very sort of different approach. Because in this one, it's like, they kidnap Splinter and then throw him up on the wall where he's like, looks like he's dying and pouring with sweat. He looks like Rambo from the flashback scenes in Vietnam. I'm amazed.
I was going to say,
sorry, like Shredder didn't like cut his chest open. You know
the scene in Lethal Weapon too, where they're just like electrocuting him.
Yeah. It's pretty messed up. And then you've got that little Sid kid, the gingerhead kid, who's like the one in the middle.
Twerp.
Yeah, he's just a little bit of he goes on a journey of discovery and learning from Splinter. But yeah, we get that. You are right that we have that moment where they've been roughed up. They've burnt down April O'Neil's dad's place. They've all escaped, and they get in a van, and they go out. And this is what I find very interesting of all the movies. We actually understand that there is more to New York than New York City. We go to New York State in this movie, technically North Carolina, because that's where this movie was shot. But that being said, I'm watching this movie going, this is the only one. that admits that there's ports in New York than the city of New York.
On Wall Street, they go to the Hamptons. They're on the beach, man.
That doesn't count. Hamptons doesn't count. That's still part of the city.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I picked this movie. You see more of New York. You see kind of
you do get that child dungeon warehouse on the island, which doesn't exist.
You get the child hangout dungeon, you get the sewers, you get the city.
Yeah. You really get all sides of New York.
You get all of it.
Yep.
You get muggings on the trains.
You get a Jose Canseco bat. You got everything.
Yep.
Yeah, violence in Central Park. I mean, yeah, okay, right, there you go. But yeah, it does have that. They go to the house from Skeleton Key. They dump Raphael in a bathtub face down and go, he'll be fine.
Yeah. Literally his limbs are just hanging out.
Yeah, I was like
I think it's fine.
I'm like, holy shit, guys. Like, again, my favorite character.
It would have been funny if it was just his shell, like his arms, legs, and head were in. And they're just like, which they never really do. I mean, there's one scene later on where Michelangelo drops his head down, and then has some crazy one-liner after it.
Goes,
like,
I love turtle. Dude, that was actually very funny. When they did that, that was hilarious. But yeah, it becomes they go to the planet Dagobah, where they then do their ninja Jedi training. They then get in touch with the Force, and Obi-Wan Splinter appears to them as a Force ghost and says some nice stuff about them as their sort of dad. And then they go back to New York and they kick everybody's ass. And
sorry, an Australian man goes to New York. That's unbelievable.
I mean, I don't buy it.
To be clear. Yeah. I love that scene when I love the idea that in Daredevil you have the hand, and in Turtles you have the foot, right? Yeah. So a real stretch.
That's my favorite part of the Ninja Turtles lure, is that Matt Murdock as a child is the one carrying their bowl with all 4 turtles in it, and then the radioactive ooze hits him, turns him into Daredevil, and it transforms them. That's my favorite part of
that's what happens in the Affleck movie, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
But
by the way, I like the Affleck movie. I'm going to go on record. I like it.
You could have picked that.
I could have.
That's crazy. There's
it.
really not a lot of comic book movies that take place in New York.
None at all.
Almost none.
Yeah.
But the scene when Michelangelo is facing off with the foot soldier with the nunchucks, I like that. The little showdown.
Yeah, he's kind of like
it's like the Tombstone scene. Yeah. Oh, they're teenagers. They're just like us, man. They're raised by TV and a large radioactive rat.
I tell you what, there was an outrageous lack of cone-fronted digger tanks appearing out of the ground.
Oh yeah. No Mausers. No.
Yeah, what the hell, man? I love this.
I think the game ruined our thought process for what movies could be, but that's why I think the new movie it really does kind of capture that kind of cartoony feel, but still being pretty sweet.
I'm gonna have to get on this. I do like the random circle. So we then get this flashback of how Splinter's ninja pet owner taught
his master.
Yeah, he was in a love triangle with another guy who then murders the girl and him, and then he gets out and he bites the face of this guy, and it turns out that is Shredder. Ooh. Yeah. And Shredder's like, I knew you, giant rat person that I like.
And I'm sure Will is going to tell us which Kurosawa movie that's ripping from.
Ron, obviously. I was thinking you guys can't tell. It's obviously a mix of Ron and Hidden Fortress.
And then also gets this sort of ending of Shredder turns up and beats the shit out of the turtles. It's pretty cool. Because he knows their moves, because the moves he's learned are from Splinter. But then Splinter turns up, catches that knife, kind of has that moment sort of, and then uses the nunchucks and basically catches sort of Splinter. But that's the thing of he's got Splinter, he's hanging off the edge, he's gonna save him, you go, we go. Splinter sort of Shredder tries to kill him, he catches the knife and Shredder falls into a dump truck, and then Casey Jones crushes him. But I'm again, kind of dark and cool. And it's Splinter didn't want to. Shredder just couldn't. He's just a bad guy.
That shot of Splinter, who's again a animatronic rat. He nunchucks him. That shot of Splinter or Shredder flipping over is like seared into my brain. And he's just like holding on. He's like, I can save you. And he's like, no, fuck you.
I also like
I'll be back.
Casey Jones, like when the first time he comes in, and
he's the best part of this movie.
He is.
Oh,
he's at the foot hangout, and he comes upon Splinter, and you see him, and the actor just sort of look at him, and he goes, like, taking the moment, okay, it's a 5 foot tall talking rat, and he goes, okay, just shrugs it off.
Only in New York, am I right?
Yeah. He's like, well, I did just hang out with like 4 turtles, so okay.
Yeah, that's fair. Sure. Yeah, he's just like, oh, you're the Splinter they were talking about.
I
thought the mushrooms were kicking in.
Yeah, I was seeing some shit in that campfire up in upstate New York. I don't know what was going on there. Swamp gas. I'm sure it was swamp gas.
No, it's the mushrooms on the pizza.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yes. But all in all, a weirdly satisfying watch where as we've talked about on the podcast before, in that really interesting sweet spot. Because like you're saying, you know, when you had those Michael Bay produced ones where they're using motion capture and it's all in full HD and they're using slow motion. I've seen the trailers, right? But I haven't watched the movie. It didn't really interest me. But
I've only seen the bit with Megan Fox walks through the
right. But in this one, it's you're in many ways constantly being charmed by the magic trick.
Yeah.
The magic trick of how are they doing this? And like I said, the action scenes you often see, I mean, even like, let's talk about Christopher Nolan Batman for a second, but he's somewhat restricted by his suit. So it's all very these guys are doing spin kicks, flips, like actual moves, and they're doing it in one shot. Like it's that Golden Harvest element. It's that you're bringing these guys that make martial arts movies in to make this movie. So you've got actual stunt work going on. You've got them. There's a bit where he casually comes skateboarding up and he flips the skateboard up into his arm. I couldn't do that. Not wearing a 40-pound suit and a mask.
No.
I can't even do that.
It makes the movie for a plot that is so absolutely insane. It makes it feel so much more grounded because it's like they're really doing it. And there's not a ton of action in this movie. For them, to rewatching, I'm like, for them to consider this movie to deem it too violent was like watching it now. You're like, I mean, I guess, but
yeah, it's. I think it's
completely neuter the sequel.
Yeah, I think literally because it was shot like it was literally very dark. Like, I think that just triggered parents back then to be like, oh my god, this is like horribly violent.
Yeah. But you see all their dicks.
That's a very important choice.
Yeah, corkscrew dicks. Yeah.
The script called for it.
But like this movie, one thing I really love about it is I love that, you know, it's a kid's movie, but it's not a kid's movie that talks down.
It doesn't pander. No, you're right.
And which is funny because the second one totally does.
Still,
and as a kid, I loved it just as much. Like I could not. I think I told you guys, it wasn't even until years later where I realized about the second one, where I'm like, oh yeah, what is the secret of the ooze? There is no secret of the ooze. What is that title?
It's the ooze inside of us all along, Will. You have to find your ooze.
That's number 2 is a movie where I fully admit, like, this is a bad movie.
But it's so fun.
I also
it's so
love
fun though. Yeah, it's so cheesy. It's ridiculous. Again, Shredder does fuck all. The movie's so neutered. The villain of it kills himself.
Yeah, it's astounding. Again, perfect film, 5 stars, no notes.
Yeah. Shredder, you don't need to do this. Bridge claps.
Oh, that's awesome. Let's watch part 2 today.
Yeah,
the movie's great.
Yeah.
This what a peculiar week it was, considering New York and considering the shit, because to begin with we were like, oh, Ghostbusters, Goodfellas, you know, Wolf of Wall Street, there's
Turtles.
and we ended up with Wall Street, Crocodile Dundee, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I couldn't be more proud and disappointed in us.
I was going to do is like, the Wolf of Wall Street's on fire down below. No way.
I mean, it was almost intimidating. I mean, there are some states it's harder than others. And New York is, you know, we've already done 2 California episodes, and I mean, we were even joking before we started rolling, I was like, oh, what if we talked about doing the sequel episode where we do Wall Street 2, Crocodile Dundee 2, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2.
Yep.
Like, don't threaten me with a good time.
And Ghostbusters 2 and Coming to America and Gangs of New York 2.
But it's like, kind of like last week, DC was such a fun week to do. This was a fun week in a different way. As in, like, wow, Wall Street is a strange movie, and wow, Crocodile Dundee is out there, and wow, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, what a random movie, that it almost is kind of reflective of just the variety of New York. I mean, if I'm talking New York, I'm talking New York City, and you've got your boroughs, and you've got your areas, and you've got just the real mishmash of the whole world living there on top of each other, that we did bring quite a random selection of movies to the table.
Well, a selection of movies that like not everybody talks about. Like one of the reasons I didn't want to do Ghostbusters or something like that is like everybody has talked those movies to death. Everybody has dissected those movies. And not that we won't do them in the future, but just for our first go around for New York City, with my choice especially, I'm like, this was my introduction to New York City and like what that's like. And so it just meant so much to me as a kid. I think it's good we pick stuff that's not quite the definitive. We didn't pick Manhattan. We didn't pick, New York, but
Made in Manhattan.
Yeah. Made in Manhattan.
The Oklahoma of New York.
So I think I'm actually happy with our choices because they're not the obvious ones.
I don't know what we're gonna do next because there's no other New York movies. This is it. Just these three.
None. This is
You've heard it here.
Wipe my hands clean of that one. We are good.
Yeah.
Do Sully. It's a forced water landing. I do like it. You enjoy that movie. So let's talk about some of those also rants. There was dozens. That's the thing. Yeah. Like, where would we go? I mean, like, because Ryan,
I had my gut pick.
Our introduction to New York, right? Your introduction to New York was being born. So, like,
in a sewer.
What to you?
To be clear, I didn't grow up in the city. I grew up in Queens. So like my gut pick was going to be Coming to America because it's the only movie that kind of represents Queens. And I think it's very tonally adjacent to a Crocodile Dundee, but they're very different films. There's no boomerangs in mine for one. Regrettably.
But people sweat from a baboon's balls. You got some quality insults.
But that was my go. Yeah, I mean, I was mulling around either Ghostbusters for sure or Coming to America. But I also wanted to pick They Came Together, the romantic comedy with Amy Poehler and Paul Rudd.
Yeah, I feel like
which I'm gonna watch right when we're done recording this.
I think that maybe what we could do is do kind of like a romantic comedy New York special because they're from
No Shortage
Harry Met Sally. You've got many.
You Got Mail.
Yeah, Ghostbusters 2.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2. There's really
Spider-Man 3. So many.
My favorite Ghostbusters. Is it Ghostbusters 2 line? Or is I want to run some... No, it's Ghostbusters 1. I want to run some gynecological tests on the mother. Who wouldn't?
Oh, God. Oh, my God.
But yeah, I mean... I think, like we say, New York is definitely going to be one that we're going to have to return to. I think we also have to try and find, because I was tempted to pick, because I've never seen it and heard great things, but Synecdoche, New York. Is that how you say it?
Is that, I don't know that's how you say it, but yeah.
It's
Quiniquatsi, the one that Philip Glass did all the music for. The other one is just like shots.
There's so many things out there to choose from. But in this particular case, let's try and get into it. Which to you, like, is New York? So, like, Will, you've been to New York City, right? You've been. I got to go. I was really lucky. I got to go for work, so I got to go 4 or 5 times. And so I'm like, oh man, I finally got to feel that vibe and see that busyness and see all those things that I always see in movies and everything else on top of it. Is like, because they are. I mean, Wall Street is nothing but just New York City. I mean, it's just absolutely everything.
Even if you take like the constant establishing shots, like you have to omit those, take those out. Which one? Because immediately you're going to feel like, oh, that's New York. But if you take that establishing like helicopter shot out of these movies, which one still feels very New York? And for me, it's Wall Street. Absolutely.
you've got everybody going up the escalators. It's got that kind of the hustle and bustle. It's got the busy, and I kind of like you were saying, Ryan, is it hits a lot of those places that the place off Central Park, the restaurants, the bars, the pubs, the blue collar workers, the white collar workers, the sweeping views out of these buildings and things like that. Okay, I can see Crocodile Dundee does a little bit more of the I'm a tourist. It's like the tourist experience of New York. It's very much the whole just, you've got the yellow cabs, and you've got the subway, and you've got the, looking at the sights and sounds kind of thing. And then Ninja Turtles is interesting because it gives you that kind of grittiness, the darkness, a little bit more of the danger, funnily enough, of New York. But also, like I said earlier, is the only one that really understands that there is more than just city and the Hamptons. It actually goes out. Now, granted, like I said, into North Carolina, but I was sitting there watching the movie going, this is the only one. This is the only one. Is Ninja Turtles going to win? So Will, what do you think?
I mean, I think for those, I think for those reasons, you see more of the city. The only thing you don't see is all the fancy like business Wall Street stuff that you see in Wall Street, but you get the city itself, you get the subway.
The turtles are synonymous with New York, much like the Ghostbusters. Like it's just you can't transplant those turtles somewhere else and have the same thing. They don't exist outside of that bubble. Granted, that bubble is truly bizarre.
Absolutely. But you know what? The lines of this movie, everything is so iconic to me that when I was visiting New York City, I realized at some point, I'm like, I'm on 7th and Bleecker. Oh, if I go up here, this is where April's like antique shop is.
I gotta get into the sewer, man.
So I was getting excited because like I was on the street. I'm like, I know where I am because of this movie.
That's the same experience I had going to New York because of Dundee, because of Ghostbusters. It was just all these things I'd seen in these movies going, oh, there's that building, there's this, there's that. It's like,
I mean, you can go to that firehouse in New York City and visit, like they have the Ghostbusters sign on it. Can't do that with turtles.
I did.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. They let you slide down the pole.
They tried to. They knew I was too much of a.
They couldn't get me off.
He's gonna have a heart attack if he goes in here. We're not letting him in.
Yeah, don't walk into a place and say, "Get me off." That doesn't work very well. Unless Michael Douglas is there, then you'll find out about the secret of his ooze right there. Double callback, bish bash bosh. There you go. That's what I'm here for. Okay, Will, you're leaning towards Ninja Turtles. Ryan, you're leaning towards Wall Street. And then I'm like Crocodile Dundeeing this because it's my very experience of going to New York.
Fair. Yeah.
Aside from pulling a knife.
I mean, all of these movies are very, very, and that's the hardest part about this city is they're all very New York, But I think for me, Wall Street captures that realistic side of it, minus the interior decorating, like we talked about. But it's this and Dundee are so much more grounded in realism. Like the realistic side of that, like late 80s New York, that carefree kind of drug fueled vibe, I guess, versus like a taxi driver or something that was 70s. Or
I know what you mean.
Crime riddled New York. This was more like 80s. Everything was like, hey, we're all happy people now. But
I get you. I mean, and I will say that like the Ninja Turtles New York is a little bit comic booky. It does have that little bit, like, but I mean, what I mean is it's got a kind of a sort of folksy innocence about the teens doing crimes, like the back, there's the foot soldiers, like, hey, load up, all the stuff in the back and let's go.
It is very much like a kid's movie, but it's just dark and gritty that you normally never see for a kid's movie based off of a fucking Saturday morning cartoon.
No, I will. I mean, I'll go with you on that. And the thing is, you are annoyingly winning me over about Wall Street, because when I am sitting there thinking about, and as much as I was young, harping on the Hamptons, they do get out, and it's that weird moment where he's like seeing the sun setting. It was cool, and it did look a certain way, and you do see a lot, and it does get that vibe, the New York vibe, and it's kind of got like the way everyone's sort of shit talking each other and that kind of New York feel. Again, like, they do, like I said, the Ninja Turtles, and to a degree, Crocodile Dundee, I think, pushes into a little cliche. You got your cliche characters. You got
It's a
your,
little more
hey,
fantasy.
oh,
Sure. Yeah.
you know, you got the Italian guy. You got
The stereotypes. Yeah.
the stereotypes do kind of come in.
You get that in Wall Street with like Martin Sheen's friend group when he
Yeah.
shows up to the hospital and the guy's now he's got no fucking sleeves on.
Yeah.
You know, they might as well have gotten Martin Scorsese's mother in this movie.
Yes. Here's what I'll say for Wall Street, which is in its favor, which is it's the only one that also gets into like has the blue collar workers, the union workers.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Ninja Turtles, the pizza they decided to show off was Domino's. The only thing the second movie did better is they had like, you know, what a real like New York style pizza place was.
Which famously, I think Domino's wasn't even their promotional partner, right? I think it was Pizza Hut. They partnered with Pizza Hut, but they showed Domino's in the movie or something like that.
I think the first movie they partnered with I don't quite know because it was Pizza Hut after that for years.
They should go
That's
to
where I got
Taco
my
Bell.
VHS tapes.
The van they escape in doesn't shoot pizza discs.
Yeah, I know. It was
Bullshit.
bummed. Where's the green? I was hoping that they were going to be like, because again, I didn't remember much of the movie. I was hoping for an A-Team style construction montage, and that we were going to end up with like, you know, the battle, like the turtle.
You should watch the new one.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, I'll definitely watch the new one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would give that in favor for Wall Street is that it's showing like not only is it showing like the rich fancy, but Martin Sheen and like his fellow like you know workers.
Yeah, you get that side
getting
of
the
it.
blue collar side of it too.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, and it's like, but I'll tell you this much. Okay, I'm gonna land on Wall Street, but I'm unsatisfied. You know, I don't feel like we've crushed it. I feel like we're gonna have to return. Maybe we'll bring a guest on.
I think my takeaway, even watching like all three of these movies, I feel like we settled on. Well, I mean, maybe not Will because you picked this almost immediately.
No, I picked the
I
perfect
feel like
movie.
yeah,
I didn't settle.
but like I feel like there are better versions of similar movies we could pick for a follow-up episode.
Yeah, no, I agree. So I guess so. Are we gonna reluctantly? We're gonna hand the crown to Wall Street for now, but we're also kind of recording this for the SEC and the FBI, so we can, in the end, actually ship Wall Street off to the prison and get a better one. Because
we're secretly working with Terrence Stamp to
okay, all right. It's
the guy from Superman.
Because it's a reluctant. All right, here we are, the United States Movie Podcast, the official movie to represent New York until such time as we do the return episode with all of the classics that we've been talking about. But Wall Street is the official movie to represent New York. But I enjoyed watching Crocodile Dundee, and I enjoyed watching Teenage Mutant.
These were fun, three fun movies, and what a bizarre triple feature
it was.
Fucking run.
It was weird. But but Crocodile Dundee made me feel happy. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles impressed me, and Wall Street maybe just like, okay, like it was, again, like I said, there's no wrong order to watch these. You know, sometimes we talk about there's going to be a big bummer or a big,
much like the personality of these Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The films we've picked have been very diverse, and I appreciate
very much so. Very much so. Which would you assign to which? I think Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is definitely Michelangelo. I think.
Yeah, and fair.
Crocodile Dundee, I think, has got to have a little bit of Raphael because he's cool and rude, you know, like when he's there. And then Wall Street, that's definitely Donatello.
Mm-hmm.
And
more cerebral.
Yeah. Because Leonardo.
I don't know enough about turtles to disagree with you.
Liar, pants on fire. So we did talk about our. We've already talked about our also rants. I think there's a list that's too many to even name. But what we need to do now is to decide where we're going next week. And I say the word decide because I have decided to not just arbitrarily choose. Now I've got a state that we can go to, but also this week is a very specific week for America. It's Thanksgiving. So we've got Thanksgiving coming up this week. It would have just happened like last week if you're listening to this podcast right now. So it's coming up this week when you're listening to this podcast. But do you guys want to do a Thanksgiving movie special? A movie, so we can either do Thanksgiving or we can just go to the state that I want to do. But I thought I would open it up to you guys. What do you want to do?
I'd have to see what Thanksgiving movies are. I might just go see the new Eli Roth Thanksgiving movie.
Say, like, are we all gonna go see the new Eli Roth?
Is that? I mean, I know the movie that I would choose, but it's a little bit out there. It's yeah.
Oh, you're picking Thanksgiving, aren't you? The B movie slasher about mutant killing.
Mine is
turkey.
a technical comedy / horror based off a classic TV show and is a sequel. Yeah.
What?
You're picking Ninja Turtles too.
That's just a bunch of words, man.
So what do you
Wait,
want to do? Do
say
you guys
that-
want to do Thanksgiving, or do you want me to give you?
Sure,
just
we can do a Thanksgiving.
Let's do a
special.
Thanksgiving.
You
Yeah.
want to do a Thanksgiving
Keep
one?
it festive.
Okay, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's keep with it. We're going to do a Thanksgiving special. We're going to find the movie that we feel best denotes Thanksgiving or makes us think about Thanksgiving next week. If you have any ideas for those movies, reach out to us. You can find me online as Ollie Pettigrew or as That Englishman in Texas. I do appreciate my Monday videos are usually talking about the movies and the podcast, and you guys really do get in the comments with some great ideas. Our Washington, D.C. episode, honestly, everyone was saying Mr. Smith Goes to Washington was the one we should have done, which I've never seen. I've only ever seen the Simpsons parody. But that was a very popular one in my comment section. You can find Will online. He's got a TikTok entitled Willennial. You can find him. He likes to talk about movies. He reviews some of the ones that he's got. He really gets into his movies. So follow him there and do get into it. And then Ryan, like I said, you can
find me in the sewers eating sideways pizza.
And you can also find some of his designs from the podcast, which we are now moving towards getting some merchandise. But you can order some right now, threadless.com/Rhino Digital, RYNO Digital. Last thing I want you guys to do, for you guys who are watching us on YouTube, thank you very much. If you haven't already, subscribe to us and hit that notifications bell. That helps. Jump into the comments as well. Just give us a comment on this episode or what you think we should do for our Thanksgiving episode. Again, that really helps us and gets us out there. If you're listening to our podcast, do us a favor, rate, review, share, tell your friends, get into the conversation. But yeah, get ready for Thanksgiving. Get stretching for some turkey and turkey sandwiches and some sweet potato, because it's that special time of year, ladies and gents. Until then, Ryan, Will, thanks again, guys. That was a fun episode. I can't wait to come back to New York. I think that's going to be some special stuff. And to everybody at home, thanks for taking part, watching, and listening to this episode of the United States of a Movie podcast.